Good evening, everyone. May I have a motion, please, to return the regular board meeting to public session? Thank you, Dr. McCleary and Mr. LeMay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, abstentions, motion carries 8-0-0. I call the regular board meeting to order. All board members are present this evening except for Mr. Mecca. In accordance with Executive Order 202.1 and the extension of 202.92, please be advised that members of the public will not be permitted to attend the board meeting in person. This meeting is being conducted as a webinar, and the public has had the option to register for this meeting. At this time, if everyone would please unmute, and Mrs. Van Slyce, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the
United States of America and to the republic
for which it
stands,
one nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible, with liberty
and
and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. If everyone would please remute their microphone. Thank you. Is there a motion, please, to approve the agenda as presented? Thank you, Mr. Bornstein. Mrs. Beeger, second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries 8-0-0. Dr. McKenna, I turn it over to you, sir, for board recognition.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Leatherbarrow. We've got two recognitions we'd like to do tonight. Our first one this evening, we will continue with our school spotlight, highlighting the great work that goes on within our classrooms. This month, our school spotlight focuses on Maple East and the culturally responsive teaching model that they utilize. I'd like to welcome Dr. Bill Bowen, principal at Maple East, who will explain more about this initiative. Dr. Bowen, I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. McKenna, and thank you to the school board for recognizing our work and inviting me here tonight. I'm so excited to share with you some of our work at Maple East in the area of culturally responsive teaching practices. So culturally responsive teaching really recognizes the value of and importance of bringing students' cultural backgrounds and identities into all aspects of the school program. We are looking specifically this year at Maple East into our literacy instruction to ensure that it's being culturally responsive for our student body. So we hope through our literacy instruction to provide kids with windows and mirrors, and that is texts that serve as windows for kids to learn about other cultures through the characters in the text, but also mirrors. Kids really need to have access to books and text where they can see their own culture and identity reflected through the text so they can relate to the characters. So we've been doing a lot of work in this area, and I thank our shared decision-making team who really spearheaded this effort, and also our teachers who were part of this video tonight, Amanda Kamarmi, also Heidi Jacobs, Katie McFarland, and Rebecca Milne. And I have to thank Nick and also David Morales for creating a video that I think will give you some really good insight into what culturally responsive teaching looks like at the elementary level. So thank you, Nick. And I think at this time, Nick will share. Culturally responsive teaching is a type of pedagogy that recognizes the importance of incorporating students' cultural backgrounds into all aspects of learning.
This year, we have decided to focus specifically on culturally responsive literacy instruction. Our teachers are here today to show you some examples of our work in this area.
Every day in school, the students get to hear a read aloud in the classroom. And read alouds are especially great because not only do they help reinforce or teach reading comprehension skills, they also provide windows and mirrors for the students. A window is where students look and see other cultures that they may not have experienced before or learned about before. If it's a mirror, they get to see themselves reflected in the book itself. So either their identity or their culture or their background, they get to see that in a book that they may not have seen before. The read alouds are a really great opportunity to expose children to different books with those different characters from various backgrounds and cultures. So it helps broaden their worldview without having to go anywhere. So you're bringing the world to the classroom.
Since implementing Teachers College Reading Workshop in our classroom, the district has provided us with a vast library of books. This includes both read-alouds and a leveled library. The leveled library is fantastic because it allows us to differentiate the reading levels of our students, as well as open a window into other cultures. We're so lucky to have this, and it is provided in every classroom in our school.
Pete loves his elephant, but guess what? It goes missing. How would you feel if your favorite stuffed animal went missing? So you know how that feels, right?
At Maple East, we utilize Teachers College Readers and Writers Workshop. Teachers College is committed to culturally responsive teaching. Throughout the reading and writing units, there are specific texts and lessons that address cultural competence and diversity. One example is the 4th grade Readers Workshop Historical Fiction Unit. In this unit, the students participate in book clubs and listen to read-alouds from mentor texts that teach cultural diversity as well as the history of major issues and time periods. Some of these include segregation, civil rights, the Great Depression, Japanese internment, slavery, and the Holocaust.
Our faculty is committed to culturally responsive teaching for our students and school community. In addition to literacy instruction, we've been examining all areas of our school curriculum, including our social studies program, curriculum extensions, and how we teach students about holidays. We recognize there is much more work to be done, and we are excited to continue this work in the coming years ahead.
That's really fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Bowen, for sharing that video, and for Mr. Filipowski for your help with that. Dr. McKenna, did you have anything else you wanted to say about this?
I just want to say thank you very much, Dr. Bowen, and you and your whole staff have done just a great job on the culturally responsive teaching model and how you've implemented all of the aspects from the Teachers College program as well. It's impressive. And on behalf of myself, the whole board, and really our whole district, thank you very much for all your efforts. It's truly appreciated, making a big difference with our kids.
Well, thank you, everyone. And I have to thank our faculty again. We are committed and we've done some great work, and more to come in the coming years ahead. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other board acknowledgements at this time? Mrs. Van Cise?
I would just like to say, along with Dr. McKenna, the leadership team, and Mrs. Christine Hardy, I would like to acknowledge our district athletic director, Mr. Chris Muchika, and the athletic directors from North, Julie Arnold, from East, Nick Suchina, and from South, Adam Erickson, for their immense efforts and lightning speed action in bringing forth high-risk sports in less than 1 week based on the governor and section's decisions. And next month, I look forward to acknowledging all those involved in resuming our extracurriculars. But thank you to the athletic directors in getting the sports up and rolling.
Thank you, Mrs. Van Cise. Anybody else? All right, Dr. McCleary, I now turn it over to you.
Oh, Ms. Leatherbear, I got one more. We got one more we have to do today.
I'm sorry, Dr. McKenna, go ahead.
Yeah, well, first, I just want to say I want to echo what Mrs. Van Cise said too, and I want to thank our athletic directors for an absolutely amazing job they did. They moved mountains to make things happen in this last week, and it's truly appreciated. But we do have one more recognition we'd like to do tonight. Next, we are honored to say that the Williamsville Central School District has been recognized as a district of distinction for closing the achievement gap in the subject area of mathematics with the Math Lab program. I want to thank our amazing math department and our outstanding teachers for making this possible. Eric Weiss, executive editor for District Administration Magazine, begins our presentation tonight. And we have a small video we want to show you about this great award our district just won.
Today, we are here to honor Williamsville Central School District for winning the Districts of Distinction Award in the Closing the Achievement Gap category. The New York District has built a responsive instructional model that utilizes daily computerized assessments to generate daily real-time data to help identify and respond to struggling students. These non-graded formative assessments are used to automatically adjust students' daily schedules for more support. This model has transformed the intervention paradigm from one that is focused solely on intervention to one that includes prevention. It's a model that districts across the nation can replicate as more and more students fall behind in math due to distance learning. Now, without further ado, please welcome Christopher McGinley, Coordinator of K-12 Mathematics and Computer Science at Williamsville Central School District.
Thank you, Eric, for that wonderful introduction, and thank you to District Administration for this truly remarkable recognition and honor. I would like to thank our Board of Education, Dr. McKenna, Dr. Balin, Mr. O'Malley, Math Specialist at Casey Middle School, and Mr. Chris Zachary, one of our talented software developers, for their continued support of our math program. Williamsville's math program has earned the reputation as being on the cutting edge of implementing research-based instructional strategies while creating structures to improve and provide all students with opportunities to achieve at the highest levels possible. In fact, Williamsville has also been recognized by Buffalo Business First as the #1 school district for mathematics for the last 11 consecutive years. The success of our math program is the result of innovative programs such as Math Lab and our use of data to drive instruction.
As a classroom teacher, I can quickly analyze the data myself, and I can use that in my math classroom to reteach anything that seems like the majority of students might be falling behind in.
This system of checking on a daily basis and reteaching where we need to reteach, or finding new ways to teach something that wasn't grasped, gives us the opportunity then to have stronger foundations for every kid.
I think what it's done is maybe taken the labels off of students, and we even do this as adults maybe when we talk. I was good at math, or I was never a strong student in math. I think this has moved us closer to eliminating those labels, recognizing that math is not just one monolith of a subject. There are skills that are associated with it, and we all have unique learning profiles where we can be strong in some areas and need support in others, regardless of what our grade point average is.
Once you go there a couple times, you're like, hey, this isn't that bad. I'm doing better in math, why not go to it? So you originally think it's a bad thing, but then once you get more and more into it, you start doing better in school, you start feeling better about yourself, and then you start doing better all in general.
If you take it slow, if you monitor what it is they know and don't know extremely regularly and react to that, learning happens every single time. The Math Lab allows us to do that with every student every single day.
As a result of everyone's hard work and the district's strategic and long-term commitment to continuous improvement, we are not only closing the achievement gap in Williamsville, but we are also raising the performance of all students.
Excellent, thank you. Back to the board for any recognition. All right, seeing none, I think we're ready to move on to public expression. There will be 3 opportunities this evening for members of the public to speak. We have 2 public expression opportunities, and we also have our budget forum. So if you're not able to jump on right now, you can always join us later. Dr. McCleary, would you please read the board's public expression statement?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Leatherbarrow. Welcome to all who have registered to observe this regular Zoom board meeting. Per policy 1510, the board has set aside 30 minutes for public expression, a time when we invite members of the community to share ideas and concerns with us. We welcome this opportunity to hear from you. Each person is given up to 3 minutes in which to address the board. At 2.5 minutes, I will notify you that there are 30 seconds remaining. At 3 minutes, I will interrupt and thank you for your remarks. This is a meeting held in public rather than a public meeting, which means we will not be engaging in dialogue with members of the community this evening. Rest assured, we are listening carefully and we take seriously what you have to say. We would also like to ask that you demonstrate respect for us and for one another by speaking to the issues, giving us ideas and sharing your opinions, but not engaging in any personal attack. As Mrs. Leatherbarrow said, we will have a second public expression and there will be a separate public expression during the budget section of our meeting tonight. Those who have pre-registered for public expression will be called on, and if there's time allowed, I will call on those interested in addressing the board by noticing if you have raised your virtual Zoom hand. Our first speaker this evening is Dana Hensley. Ms. Hensley, are you here?
Yes, it's actually my daughter, Savannah, that is speaking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Savannah, are you a student?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Savannah Hensley. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I also want to thank the board members for volunteering their time and energy to oversee the district and administrators, teachers for doing their best in such a rough time. I am 13 years old and I am in 7th grade at Casey Middle School. I have 3 younger siblings and they're all struggling with the effects of COVID right now, like pretty much everybody. My siblings do not have learning disabilities. Actually, they're all pretty smart. My brother is now going to a private school because his grades and mental health were plummeting when we were in the midst of virtual school. He does not struggle normally in school. He's actually in 6th grade and taking 7th grade math, and he skipped kindergarten too. My youngest sister goes to preschool 5 days a week. So guess who's supervising her other sister while my mom takes her to preschool and my dad works? Me. My Zoom starts at 8:55 and my sister's starts at 9. You do the math. I'm not the only kid taking care of their siblings while their parents at work, school, or grocery shopping. Ask your students. How many of them are babysitting while on their Zoom/meets? My grades have definitely suffered this year, and I have a better situation than most. I have internet in my house, and I have a loving and supportive family. Other states mask and distance when possible, but they do not always keep to the 6-foot rule because the benefit of school is huge and the harm of keeping kids in the virtual world is huge. Who is fighting for us to go to school every day? It seems like nobody but our parents. Teachers and administrators tell our parents they want us all back in school full time, but I'm not seeing them fighting for us publicly. We need to see and hear you fighting for us. Call a press conference. The board should write a collective letter to legislators, Erie County Department of Health, and the state. Dr. McKenna should group with other superintendents and demand changes to the 6-foot rule. A representative of the President Biden recently said that the president wants, by day 100 of his presidency, 1 day a week for kids in school. What about before then? What about the fall? What about the kids who aren't showing up to classes? We are not driving the pandemic. We are the casualties. I chose to speak tonight. These are my words, and I'm speaking them for every child in this district that isn't old enough to. I'm asking you, the adults in the room, who will fight for us? As Dr. Seuss once said, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to change. It's not. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Our next speaker is Darlene McClay. Darlene, are you here?
Dr. McClary, I don't see Mrs. McClay as an attendee in tonight's meeting.
Okay, thank you. Then the next person on the list is Jessica Fiscalo.
Hello, thank you. Wow, that was a really powerful statement to follow, but I echo and agree with everything that Savannah just shared. I watch the weekly videos that Dr. McKenna shares, and I had to stop watching them because they just show 2/5 of the student experience right now and not the other 3/5. Hybrid students are left really, and families, we're left alone for those 3 out of the 5 days. Parents have had to find resources, be creative, spend money, make place in their homes, act as tech support, reading teacher, art teacher, gym teacher, cafeteria worker, all while working full-time jobs in one of the wealthiest school districts in Western New York. My question is, what is the district doing to address the other 3/5 of the student experience? Is there a plan to rejoin the hybrid groups to full-time instruction? And if not, why not? After a year, is there no dedication of resources to bring back the students full-time?
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jonathan Rich.
Good evening. So I had a couple things I just want to touch on. Thank you very much for the diversity video and the how we more insight into how we educate on cultural diversity in the schools. I think it would be very valuable for parents, maybe if there was a deeper dive or an area on the district website that kind of talked about the way that those things are taught in the district. That might already exist. I fully admit that I could be ignorant. I think that it would be valuable to have reading lists for those grades online. I think I heard mention that we were teaching fourth graders about the Holocaust. That seems like something that would have to be treated very carefully to me, but I don't know for sure. Back to what I was hoping more to discuss. So one of the things that has come to our attention recently is that the district is hoping to hold musical performances of some sort this year, whether live streamed or however we want to orchestrate those. I will point out that Clarence just successfully ran several musical events, and they plan on actually holding their musical this year, it sounds like. So that would be something that I would love to see happen in Williamsville. I've sent an email to a couple of the district employees, Mr. Buckle, and the consensus seemed to be, we'll do what we can when we figure out the logistics. But again, if Clarence can do it, I'm sure Williamsville can just as well. Similar to that, I noticed that Clarence is doing in-person board meetings, and I would wonder at what point Williamsville can resume in-person board meetings. I realize that we have to comply with DOH regulations and things of that nature, but again, I think that if Clarence can do it, Williamsville can as well. The last thing I want to touch on, and Dana's daughter touched on it, and Jessica touched on it as well, is really just this mental health concern that we have, and the education falling behind that we're seeing. I received a call from the district today that was not a good call about one of the members of my household. It was a very difficult call to receive. It's going to be a very difficult issue to resolve. And I think that it really is becoming apparent that there are long-term consequences of the isolation that's occurring in our schools today, and especially with students that are hybrid. And I'd like to see some information on students that are also fully remote.
30 seconds.
Really would like to see the district take a serious stance on mental health and start really respecting the impact that it's having on students in a more sincere way. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Rich. Yep. Hang on a second. Our next speaker is Megan Landreth. I think I saw, yes. Go ahead when you're ready.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak tonight. I wanted to echo the comments that we heard from the student and also from Jessica regarding returning the schools or the students into the school buildings. I understand from attending various PTA meetings, PTA council meetings, other school board meetings, that there are many constraints that the district is working within. And I understand that. I have constraints on my business too, and we're all working around them. What I'm interested in hearing about from the board is what creative ways are we working to get the students back in the buildings within the guidelines. We can assume that the guidelines are going to be here to stay for quite some time, but I don't want to just say that this year is a write-off. I don't want us to say that the program we have in place is good enough, because it's not. The program we have in place is actually quite terrible, and especially in the elementary schools, the children are not in school for 5 days in a row. They're not learning for 5 days in a row. And We need to do better. We need to think of something that we can do. At least look at Wednesdays. What are we doing on Wednesdays? Why can't half the students go one Wednesday, the other half go the other Wednesday? How come they can't see or speak with their teacher on the days they're not there? The teacher must get breaks in the day while the in-person students are at specials or lunch periods. Couldn't they be reaching out and meeting with the students to do small group reading groups, some interactive activity to help keep them focused and engaged with the school and not just working at home from a checklist put together by their parents who frankly don't have time to do this and don't have the expertise to do it well. So I really, I watch these videos and I hear from the district about, oh, we're rebuilding music facilities and we're rebuilding the facades and we're getting athletic programs put into place, but those are not the essential functions of the district. The school needs to be focused on in-person education of the children, and all that other stuff has to come second. So I would like to know, and I keep asking questions and I don't get answers about how are our resources being allocated so that
30 seconds.
Basic needs of the students are being met and the other stuff is being put on hold, because that's not our priority right now. You're going to keep funding school psychologists and social workers because, as the previous speaker mentioned, the impact on the students is dramatic and significant and traumatic. Why don't you just fix the problem so you don't have to keep paying social workers to come in later and try to clean up the mess? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Rachel Russo. I don't remember if I saw Ms. Russo on the list.
I don't see Ms. Russo as an attendee in the Zoom meeting, Dr. McClary.
Okay, thank you. The next person signed up is Robin Lakota.
Hi,
Hopefully I
yes.
pronounced it correctly.
Close enough. It's Lakat. Thank you so much.
My second choice.
No problem.
Please.
First of all, thank you for your time. I just want to thank all the other speakers. I echo exactly what you're saying, and I'm so thankful for everyone expressing all the concerns so eloquently. I'm shifting gears just a little bit. I wanted to talk about the high-risk sports coming back. I'd like to thank you so much for bringing those back. I know it has done wonders for so many students' spirits to be back playing some of the sports that they love. And I just wanted to address, it's been brought to some of the parents' attention that the JV and modified teams will not be live streamed. I know a lot of parents are really disappointed about that, and it would be wonderful if you could reconsider and try to find a way to safely bring in just one person, one student, to live stream those videos. I just know it would be really important to all the athletes to be able to share their growth and just something that they have finally been able to participate in. It'd be great for them to be able to share that with their family and friends. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lakat. Our next speaker is Rochelle Lawless. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm the mother of first grade twin boys who are hybrid at Maple East, and I have a daughter who will be starting kindergarten in the fall. As the Board of Education for Williamsville, it's your job to establish district policies, develop an annual budget for public approval, and act as a communication link between residents and the superintendent. You also are responsible for employing a superintendent who develops the policies that you set. So as many people have already said tonight, and as policymakers, are you setting a policy to get kids back into school 5 days a week? If not now, at least by September. As the developers of the annual budget, what changes to the budget are you planning to make in order to get students back into school 5 days a week as soon as possible? Parents need answers to these questions now because we're trying to make decisions for our children's education. Wednesdays have been a terrible disappointment this year. I submitted a letter to the board earlier this week about Wednesdays, was a lot of it. 1 day of school each week has just been wasted. There's no good reason why hybrid kids are not rotating cohorts into school that day. Lancaster does this. Lots of other districts do this. I was told by our principal that teachers have trainings on Zoom and Google Classroom on Wednesdays after the 1 hour Zoom that my children have. These are simple platforms that we all had to learn a year ago, and I don't see why they need weekly trainings on the same products and applications. I've been told that they need to plan lessons and grade, but isn't that a normal job for a teacher outside of regular school hours? The fact that children aren't in school on Wednesdays is something that should be immediately changed. It costs the district no money to do this. It does not infringe upon the 6-foot distancing rules, and it allows our children valuable in-person instruction more days a week. And I want to know why children haven't been in school on Wednesdays and why they're not now. And it's very frustrating because I feel like I'm talking to a wall all the time. I speak to the principal, but then he points me to the district. I write letters to the district and to the board that mostly go unanswered. And if they do go answered, it's not a dialogue or a conversation, it's a statement back. I don't know where the buck stops, and it just always feels like I'm screaming into the abyss about these questions and concerns that I have.
30 seconds.
I feel helpless and frustrated, and I want to be heard. You know, this district is quick to move to full remote when the cases spiked, but there's no appearance of reciprocity in the other direction. High-risk sports are allowed. We're not in any designated zone, but hybrid instruction never improves. This district and board has shown no flexibility. You're going to be developing an annual budget for public approval. I want to know what changes will be made to this budget to allow for children back in school. If it's more teachers, if it's more temporary real estate, what changes will be made?
Thank you.
Barriers.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Shira Clayman. You need to unmute. Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Go
Hi.
ahead, please.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone on the board and everyone involved in the schools for all you do. And it's been heartbreaking to listen to all these parents who are struggling with the hybrid model. And I hear how difficult it is for all of us. Our situation's a little different. We picked the fully remote because the numbers seemed really bad on the week when we had to pick, and we have elderly family members who who we take care of. And unfortunately, we had to pick for the rest of the year because, as we were told, the hybrid model only works if a good portion of us pick remote. So me keeping my kids home lets other people send their kids 2 days a week. And that's why we aren't allowed to switch back, even though the numbers are better right now. So my kids are home, and I have to keep them home for the rest of the year so other people can go 2 days a week. And this is a challenge. My high schooler is doing well. My middle schooler is also doing well, but only with a huge amount of help from us. For 5th and 6th graders to be responsible 5 days a week to do all their education online and keep track of where every teacher posts everything and what every teacher wants without any face-to-face is extremely difficult. It's my opinion that it's impossible for many of them. They just don't have the cognitive functioning. They're still elementary school kids, and we're putting them in this situation where they sit in front of a computer all day, 5 days a week, and have to keep track of where different teachers put things. So I work with my son to do it. He and I meet every day after school, and we look through all the various places. Some teachers use the landing pages, others don't. Some teachers put everything on a to-do list, others don't. Some teachers have slides you need to look at, others don't. Some teachers have different information in different places. And I get it, it's really hard for them. I'm an educator myself, I'm not blaming them, but I am saying that this has been a full-time job to get my son to be able to do his work, and I have to help him with it. And now we find out that the teacher that he has 2 periods a day and homeroom has been let go because the teachers who worked at home are being forced back. And so he's now going to have a new teacher. And this is happening to many students, and not just my son. So in addition to after having to learn how all of these different teachers worked all year, now he's losing one of his favorite teachers who he had for 2 periods and homeroom a day. We're going to have to learn how new teachers do things, what new teachers expect, where new teachers put things. And it's devastating, not just for him, but for other kids in the class and parents I've talked to. Children
30 seconds.
This year has been really hard for all of us. And for you all to have made this decision, and this is a decision you made financially, to fire the teachers that you had in the school, to bring back these other teachers to save money, is a terrible one. You are putting the mental health of these students even further at risk by taking their teachers away from them. And to just be told about this now is really disappointing. I have not felt this disappointed in the district yet. And I've been here for 10 years. So that's it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comments. At this point, we have gone through the list of people who have signed up. We have probably time for 2 more individuals. If there's anyone else who would like to speak to the board, if you would like to raise your virtual hand.
Dr. McCleary, Purnima had her hand up.
Okay.
It may have just gone down. I don't know.
I don't.
Her hand is up. Purnima Mohan.
Go ahead. All right. Ms. Mohan, certainly go ahead. You need to unmute also.
I'm sorry. I think I just clicked it by mistake. I'm really sorry. Thank you.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you anyway. Anyone else with a hand up? Okay. Then this would conclude our first public expression of the evening. Thank you all who have brought things to our attention.
Thank you, Dr. McCleary, and thank you to all of our speakers. May I have a motion, please, to approve consent agenda items 6 personnel, 7 business, and 8 special needs and student activities as presented? Mr. LeMay, thank you. Ms. Kazmierzak-Bogner, second. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda items? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried unanimously 8-0-0. I would like to thank the following retirees for their service to the district. Adam Jacobs, phys ed teacher at Heim Elementary for 32 years of service, and Ellen Shores, teacher aide, Casey Middle School for 25 years of service. Thank you so much for your service to our district. Agenda item 9 is approval of our minutes. Is there a motion, please, to approve the January 12th regular board meeting and January 19th special board meeting minutes? Thank you, Mrs. Beeger. Mr. Borenstein is second. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 8-0-0. Thank you. Item 10 is the president's report. 10A is events. We will be having a virtual art show this month in March to celebrate Youth Art Month. This will be in place of our annual district art show that usually happens at the Amherst Heritage Museum. So stay tuned for more to come on that. Building visits on January 29th. Myself, Mrs. Beeger, Mrs. Kazmierzak-Bogner, Mr. LeMay, Mrs. Van Sice. We all attended visits at both North High School. We toured several classrooms and the planetarium. We visited the Capitol Project, the Music Capitol Project that's happening. The space is huge. I'm really excited for it. We went and saw the AIM model. And we also went over to Casey Middle School and visited several classrooms there and saw some instruction. We got an opportunity to observe all of the technology being utilized and see both in-person and remote learners engaged in their learning. Our next visit is scheduled for Friday, March 19th. This just came out today, board members, in case you didn't see it in your email. We'll just be looking at your calendars for Friday, March 19th. We're going to do 2 schools. We're going to do an elementary middle school feeder. So we're going to start at Forest and then go over to Mill Middle School. So this is preliminary. We won't hold you to this, but at this time, if you're able to make that commitment, could you just show me with a show of hands? So Mrs. Carey can document. Okay, I see Mr. LeMay, Ms. Kazmierzak-Bogner, and Mr. Borenstein. I think Mrs. Van Sice may have frozen. Oh, no, there you are. I see you. Okay, so we'll be checking on that, and I'm available for that as well. So if you are able to switch your plans and able to attend this visit, just let Mrs. Carey know through email.
Mrs. Leatherbarrow, I'm not sure if you saw my hand too. I
I didn't
attend
see
as
your
well.
hand. Thank you.
Lots
Thank you,
of
Mrs.
faces.
Beeger. Okay, Mrs. Carey, add Mrs. Beeger to that, please. So I also want to mention that due to our COVID restrictions, we have not been following our school building visit guidelines that we originally approved during the summertime. So, you know, what we approved was that we would meet, have breakfast, do a little social activity, and then those who were able would be able to stay on for a tour. Instead, we've switched it since we're not able to share food, we're not able to congregate in large areas. We switched it to a purpose of really viewing the students, because that's something we didn't get to do in the past. Was we left as the students were coming in the morning. We would get there before the students would come. So now we're really seeing the students in action, and we're seeing teaching and learning, which is really at the core and the heart of what we do here as a board. So I just want to say that I personally prefer this format that we're following, but I want to get your feedback on it to see if you were able to join us last month and you found that you preferred this, or if you would like to eventually go back to our old format, just so we can plan for the future and, if needed, revise our building visit guidelines. Does anyone have any feedback on how we structured our building visit this past month, or how you'd like to see it in the future? Mrs. Beeger.
Thank you, Mrs. Leatherbarrow. I really liked being able to go in the classrooms and see how this technology is looking. I can see it from my side, with seeing what my children experience through their screen. But to be able to see it in school, I think was really helpful for us as board members to get the whole picture. So I really did like having the opportunity to go and see the classrooms. I thought the format was great. I did miss interaction more with teachers. I don't need the food or large congregations, but I don't know if there's some way in the future to build that in a bit, just to be able to connect with our educators and hear their point of view of how things are going, because we certainly don't want to interrupt if we're just quickly observing a classroom and popping in and out. So I don't know if it's possible in the future. I know right now we have restrictions with size and how many people can be in the meeting, but maybe just kind of marrying the two, not necessarily a large breakfast mob, but some way that if we're visiting a building that we can have an opportunity to interact with some teachers, or they can make time to chat with us if possible. But I loved visiting the classroom. I think it was really beneficial, and the teachers and people who welcomed us, thank you. Just phenomenal what our kids and our teachers are doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Beeger. Mr. LeMay?
I couldn't agree more with what Mrs. Beeger said. I mean, this is my 6th year doing these school visits, and I enjoy them every single time. I did miss the collaboration and communication, talking with teachers and stuff like that, teachers and staff and whatnot. But I also understand with the COVID restrictions that's based on, the safety and health for everybody, that we can't do that. I'm hoping that in the future that we will look at some kind of a hybrid of that, where we can blend both together. And as most of the board members here know, and most of the staff in the district know, that even when we have had the school visits and we've had the socials, that a small group of the board has always broken off at the end that can stay longer, and has always done the tours of the schools and stuck our heads into classrooms and stuff like that. And as a board member, I find that to be one of the absolute most important things we can do, is to actually see what's going on in all 13 buildings of our district and understand what is occurring and how it's occurring and how the instruction model works. And especially this year with the hybrid and the remote and all of that. And we've all had lots of questions, and I know we've had videos on it, but it was extremely beneficial to be able to actually walk into a classroom and see a teacher interacting with both the remote students and the in-class students, and how those students are able to hear each other and interact with each other. And we were fortunate to see one child give a presentation and watch the students remotely, send little chat messages to him of praise. Hey, you did an excellent job. That was great. Awesome job. I mean, it was so overwhelming to see the positive and the great atmosphere that has been formed in such a terrible pandemic that all of us have been so stricken by and hurt by, and the emotional aspect of it, it was so overwhelming. So yeah, I really look forward to being able to go again in March. So I thank you for that. And hopefully by next year, we can do some kind of a hybrid of this with still having maybe 15 minutes of coffee or something like that with the staff and whatnot. So thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Lemay. Mrs. Van Cise.
Yeah, so just really quickly, I just want to say a big thank you to the leadership team, everyone involved, but also the principals, Mr. Caniglio, Mr. Dobmeyer, and the assistant principals of the schools. It was nicely set up. Mr. Russo showed us the capital project AIM also. It was great. What I liked is that it really truly aligns with our board goal about student achievement. Student achievement looks differently. We're still held to standards, but we know with Regents exemptions, as well as New York State assessments that were exempt, and most likely my prediction, they will be exempt again. We're looking at things differently. So to get a firsthand experience is great. And I am an educator in a high school. This model looks extremely different than the model that I see on a daily basis. So it also gave me as a board member the confidence to be able to see what's going on and how seamless the remote instruction and the in-person instruction is meshed together due to all of those different things that the teachers are doing, the technology that was purchased. We have a great thing. So I feel that's extremely important that we were able to physically go in and actually progress monitor and see for ourselves what's taking place. We are not dismissing that there are a lot of other things going on. We know that there's a lot of other mental health and things that it's very, very difficult. And as a world, we're dealing with this. But I also felt very refreshed to see what is taking place inside our walls. So I would love to see this going forward as well.
Thank you, Mrs. Van Cise. All right, I'm going to move on to the next agenda item, which is the adoption of the superintendent search timeline. I just want to draw everyone's attention, please, to our district website. We do have a tab right across the top in the banner for a superintendent search that continues to be updated. So there is still a community survey that's open, a stakeholder survey. So anybody can take that survey. And some people have taken it more than once. And that's okay. Like, you can take the survey, it's up there for you. And there's also an opportunity for community members and parents to nominate themselves to serve on the advisory search committees. So I would invite you to, I believe tomorrow that will be posted for you. So you'll see a letter from myself explaining that process and providing you the link to get to the Google form to be able to do that. So at this time, is there a motion to approve the superintendent search timeline as presented in board docs? Thank you, Mrs. Van Cise. Second, Mr. Borenstein. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, abstentions, motion carried 8-0-0. So that timeline is now approved. I believe it was listed as a draft before, so Mr. Filipowski can make that change tomorrow with the timeline. Mrs. Carey, would you like to talk about board candidate packets and our annual vote?
Yes, Mrs. Leatherberg, I'd just like to back up. So that adoption, the first and second was on both C and D, the timeline for election of school board members as well.
No, we haven't voted on the timeline for school board members yet. We've only voted on the adoption of the superintendent search timeline.
Okay.
Yeah, I separated them. That way you would have an opportunity to speak about anything that you want to talk about for board candidate packets.
Okay, so that would be E and F. I'd be happy to talk about it. Do you want me to talk about it now or after?
Yes, yeah. Why don't you go ahead and talk about it now, and then I can adopt. Sure. You can vote motion after that. Sorry about that.
So The board candidate packets in agenda item 10E and 10F are it's the voter information for the upcoming May 18th annual vote. So there's a lot of information in 10E and 10F, but just to highlight some of them, in 10E, the board candidate packets will be available online, and they're also in that board agenda item. The 3 board members whose term expires on June 30th, 2021 are Mr. Eric Borenstein, Mr. Sean LeMay, and Mr. Mark Mecca. The candidate qualifications are listed in board docs. Do you want to make a note on the signatures for petitions? Right now it's 245. That's due to the 2% of the votes that were cast last year, which were 12,226. Last year, there were no signatures needed, just the signed petition. So this is going to be a subject to change, I'm assuming, based on guidance from New York State. So stay tuned on that. And then the other highlights in agenda item 10F for the voter registration database is through Erie County Board of Elections. So there's all information in F as well to check and see if you're a registered voter and if you're a district resident, and application for absentee ballot that will be forthcoming, that may be online, but the sample of what will qualify you for an application for the absentee ballot there's 7 items to select from there. And then on vote day, our district staff will adhere to Erie County Department of Health protocols at the time of the vote and throughout this process. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Carey, and I apologize for going out of order. I thought it made sense. I just thought of it for you to maybe give a little background information before we vote on it. So we are going to vote on the procedure and timelines for the election, but it's important, as Mrs. Carey stated, that these are subject to change. So we've checked with Erie County Association of School Boards and with the New York State School Board Association. We have not received any guidance yet on whether or not petitions will be required. So we have a responsibility as a board to approve the process as of right now. So we're making a decision for a process based on the information that's available today, okay? So with that, can I please have a motion to adopt the procedure and timeline for the election of school board members? Thank you, Mrs. Beeger. And second, Mrs. Van Cise. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, abstentions, motion carried unanimously 8-0-0. Thank you. Item G under the President's report is about ECASB. There are important dates for upcoming meetings that are listed in board docs. Does anyone from the board wish to speak on anything related to the Erie County Association of School Boards? All right. Seeing no hands, Mr. LeMay attended our virtual Capitol Conference for NISBA. This is item H. Thank you for submitting that report, Mr. LeMay, and for including all the PowerPoint slides. Do you wish to add anything at the table?
Nope, I had to put extensive notes in there so you can read them all.
You did, and I was going through them. They're very helpful, so I appreciate that. Does anyone have anything else to report under NISBA? All right, thank you. So item I is the call for nominations for the Erie 1 BOCES board. 2 board members shall be elected to serve on the Board of Cooperative Educational Services, First Supervisory District of Erie County, at the meeting designated by the BOCES board president, and that will happen on April 20th, 2021. It will be held in each of the component districts. The incumbents are Mr. Edward R. Cavan from the Sweet Home Central School District and Mrs. Renee Wilson from the Cheektowaga Central School District. Both will be seeking re-election, and only one board member can serve from the same school district, which they are both from different school districts, so that's not a problem this time around. This will be on the March 9th regular board meeting agenda for board action, and the deadline for nominations is March 19th. So with that, it takes us to item 11, which is the superintendent's report. Dr. McKenna, I'm going to turn it over to you to address items 11A, B, C, and D.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Leatherbarrow. First, I'd just like to say to all of the people who spoke at public session today that we have heard your voices, and we appreciate your perspectives. We truly do. And I know that myself, the leadership team, and the principals, we discuss almost on a daily basis the issues that you bring up. And I can say just a couple of things too regarding 5 days a week. We absolutely agree that we want our students in as quickly as we possibly can. And we have had multiple conversations about that, and with multiple committees. We've met with our Reset, Relaunch, Return Committee and our Make It Happen Committee. And I can tell you that as soon as the guidance does change, we'd be ready to pivot and get our students back in as soon as we possibly could. And also, I know some folks talked about Wednesdays tonight too. And again, it's one of those issues that we review all the time. We'll be meeting with our K-12 principals on Thursday. That's one of the items on our agenda. And we will continue to review and revise and see what we can do. We're always looking at the best ways to serve our students. Also, just want to let you know regarding Wednesdays, we have had a lot of positive feedback about Wednesdays as well. There are parents and staff there is another side of that as well. But we take everything into account. We look at the whole picture, and trust me when I say, we listen, we hear, and we are making decisions that we really believe are in the best interest of our students. And we agree that we want our students back in school as quickly as we can, and we are working to that end. So I just wanted to reassure you that your voices are heard, and we are listening, and everything you said tonight, we will be discussing this week in our meetings. So I want to thank you for sharing. With that being said too, I know one of the things that was shared tonight too is about getting students scaffolding back in school. And my community update tonight, I want to emphasize some of the things that we have been working on that we're excited about. I know they mentioned athletics. There's a change in athletics. And so the first slide we want to talk about, and Nick, you can turn to the next one, is we're going to start with the athletics update. Because the guidance did change, just to clarify to our community, high-risk sports guidance was changed at the end of the day on Friday, January 22nd. And we've been working very hard to make sure that we get all of these sports in. I appreciate what Ms. Van Cise said too, because our athletic directors and a lot of people had to do an awful lot. We have approximately 1,500 students who are now participating in sports, and there was a lot of effort that took place to make that happen. After the guidance was changed, Section 6 met and updated the high-risk sports schedule. All the dates and updated sports schedules are available on our website, and there's a copy of them also right there. Next slide, Nick. High-risk sports officially started last week with tryouts and practices, and games begin later this week. It's been a great deal of effort to make that happen. And again, I really give a lot of praise to all of our athletic directors, all our coaches, and all the people who helped make that happen. Even with games beginning, Section 6 is not allowing spectators at this time. They plan on reviewing this mandate in 2 weeks, and we'll keep you updated with what happens with the notifications from Section 6. We know our families and community want to be able to watch these events. Each of our athletic departments has a YouTube channel to stream varsity games, and will provide links and a streaming schedule. And we heard what you said too today. Some folks talked about JV and they talked about modified. We will absolutely look into that and let you know. Well, we appreciate you bringing that up to us today. And now extracurricular activities before and after school activities. With the change in guidance for high-risk sports, we've received a lot of inquiries regarding extracurricular activities along with before and after school programs. So we've now started to find how can we get these activities started within the guidance. Just to clarify, the New York State Department of Health and the Erie County Department of Health have issued specific guidance for allowing high-risk sports. But school reopening guidance is still in place, which includes strict social distancing guidelines, such as the 12-foot requirement for chorus and band. So while we want to get our students in and do this as quickly as possible, we have to make sure it's thoughtful and well-planned because we have to stay within the social distancing guidelines. To resume these activities, planning and preparation are absolutely essential for health and safety. And we are doing that right now with our principals and staff. Our goal is to resume these clubs and activities following the midwinter recess. Many activities have been taking place virtually already, such as student government clubs, drama clubs, and social justice clubs. So a lot of things have been happening, but we've been having to do them virtually. Now we're going to try to see what we can do to scaffold as much as we can to in-person activities. We have been working with the principals to begin in-person extracurricular activities, but within the guidance, because although we want to get our students in as quickly as possible, it's imperative that we follow the guidelines and do it as safely as possible as well. Right now, we are canvassing our staff and club advisors for interest in resuming some of these activities. Any proposed plans for extracurricular activities or before and after school programs are due to the building principals by tomorrow. Each plan must ensure compliance with the health and safety guidance and protocols, including social distancing, space accommodations, scheduling, and most importantly, completion of the daily health screening questionnaire by students and staff who are participating in these clubs. It's important to note the resumption of clubs and extracurricular activities is also based on advisor availability. We also know how important it is for all students, whether they are remote or hybrid, high flex, to have equal access to these programs and clubs if the clubs are approved by their principals. So we're doing everything we can at this point in time to make sure that we get as much started as we possibly can. So where are we right now? Principals and building leaders have had ongoing discussions regarding extracurriculars. All proposals are due to the principals by tomorrow for review. Principals will then notify advisors of approval. Schedules will then be created and shared as quickly as possible. So this is under works right now. And I know our principals and our staff are working very hard on this. So we've heard the voices that we've over the last week, and we are responding and doing everything that we can to get these activities up as quickly as we possibly can. Next up, we want to talk about an initiative that we're doing throughout all 13 buildings, and that's the Make-A-Wish initiative. And our Willpower for Wishes program that we're starting. This is one of the amazing graphics our graphic designer, Amy Vowinkle, created in support of this initiative. She took a lot of time and worked with our staff and our students to put that together. Each school will have a unique graphic similar to this that they can share with their school community, and it will be displayed in each building. As we've mentioned before, we've partnered with Make-A-Wish to help grant wishes to students in our district. Our kickoff will be on March 1st. Each school and the district office will have unique fundraising goals with an overall goal to raise $60,000 for these wishes. Each school will also have unique fundraising activities and unique fundraising pages they can share with their school community. Each week, students in SIAC will create videos with a specific theme to inspire and motivate students in the elementary and middle schools. We wanted to make sure our students were all working together, and we wanted to make sure our high school students had an opportunity to have a positive influence on our elementary and our middle school students. These videos will be shared on Wednesdays and will be branded as our hashtag Willpower for Wishes Wednesdays. Each building will also have an opportunity to be creative throughout this event and share their fundraising progress. We are looking forward to this district-wide student-led initiative to help make a wish and to look forward to supporting our families and our communities. We look at this as a unifying event to bring us all together, all 13 schools, to do a very positive program and initiative to help our community, and this is going to students right within our very own school district. The last thing I want to talk about is just a clarification that we sent out the other day regarding snow days. Hopefully we won't have any snow days. We'll see how it goes. But I want to make sure everybody knew and understood the policy for snow days at this time. As we move through the winter months with the potential for increased inclement weather, snow days will remain as snow days as they typically have in the past. However, as we communicated to families on Friday, If we have advanced warning or planning, we could pivot to remote instruction if inclement weather has the potential to impact multiple days of instruction. So if we know in advance that there's the possibility of strong inclement weather and we can get it out fast in advance notice, then we will pivot to remote instruction if we have advanced notification. We would communicate this to students and families in advance so everyone can prepare. As always, if you haven't already done so, please sign up for the district e-alerts and follow our social media pages, as we will share any opening and closing information through these channels. I hope that helps clarify that information, but we did get many inquiries about that after we sent that out on Friday. And we thought it was important that we clarify that snow days will be treated as snow days moving forward. So
Thank you, Dr. McKenna. Before you go on to strategic planning, I'm going to pause you for one moment just to see if there's any questions or comments from the board on your update. Mrs. Speaker?
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. McKenna, for your update. I'm really happy to see a lot of those items that we've been hearing from the community were addressed tonight through your update. So thank you so much for that. I'm glad to hear that our district leaders are in discussion for many of these items as guidance keeps changing, talking about, like you said, 5 days a week or even Wednesdays. My question is for kids that are struggling right now, whether it be with mental health or with academics, what opportunities are there or what can families do to gain additional support for those kids? And I've been hearing different structures and things that are happening, but I just want to make sure that our families understand that too, that there may be opportunities with different people in the building or with teachers at different times. Could you elaborate a little on if there are families that feel like their kids are really struggling right now, who they could contact at their school for additional support for their children?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Beeger, for that. And absolutely. And if anybody has any instructional type issues that you're going through, please reach out to the classroom teacher, because I know that they're absolutely willing to help and support. And as far as counseling and social worker needs, if people are going through anxiety, stress, which is very normal through this time right now, please reach out to the school social worker, counselor, psychologist. I know that especially on Wednesdays, they are doing a lot of one-on-one with students, and they are helping and supporting as much as possible. Please reach out. I encourage anyone to reach out to the school social workers and counselors, and please express if you're having any difficulty at all, because I know that they have reached out and I know they've helped many students and families through this difficult time. And of course, you can always reach out to your building principal when in doubt. Please reach out to the principals, because we've had multiple conversations with them as well. And I know that they want families to reach out to them. If there's anybody struggling out there that needs help or support, again, feel free and please reach out to your building principal. And I know they will help link you up with additional supports.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Van Cise?
Yes, I just want to also touch on, I know it's a topic of many, but us as a board included, and that is resuming in person for those that want that. I know that we understand the guidelines with social distancing guidelines for health and safety, but I also know that's a New York State thing from the governor and New York State Ed Department. I'm just wondering if, as a leading district, perhaps we need to pressure our legislators. I know we're going to be looking at them for budget and doing that, but rallying together with other districts, other superintendents, other leaders, and working in conjunction with our legislators to make a push for our governor to lessen the restrictions, whatever it takes. I think we have to really start being proactive, because it is concerning. People will ask me, what do you think in the fall? And I'm like, absolutely not. We're back in 5 days. but I was saying that about January. So it is unsettling that the uncertainty is still here. So just really trying to make that push, because one thing I think we do need to hone in on as a board, and I do not want to speak for all 8 of the rest of you, but I believe we could say as a board and as the leadership, Dr. McKenna, we want our students back in. We want them back in 5 days a week. I'll even settle for 4 days. But due to that we're at this, barrier, perhaps we can put pressure. We can bring in our supports with our legislators and bring that in. And then looking at being, thinking outside the box. Lancaster does an every other day model. Perhaps we look at maybe doing that, once we know that staff is getting vaccinated, we know that numbers are dropping, just trying to come up with ways that we can kind of move towards resuming in person. It's easy to say, well, just fix it. Fix it, board. Why can't you do this? We have restrictions. I don't know if people know that we cannot act outside those guidelines right now. But I think we can move forward with putting some pressure where it needs to be, and maybe we can have some resolutions in favor of bringing our kids back in.
Well, we are absolutely, I am absolutely in agreement with you. And I know the leadership team and our whole administrative team is in complete agreement with you that we do want our students back in 5 days as soon as possible. But again, like you said, we do have to make sure that we work within the guidance. I can tell you that at our superintendent's meetings, and I know Savannah mentioned too earlier about we work with other superintendents, we do meet on a regular basis, and the superintendents across the region are all united in this and wanting our students back. So I can tell you that we have had discussions, and we have done things to try to reach out to the state as a superintendent group about some of these issues. And we've written our own letters here. I know that we've written to the offices ourselves here in the district. So we are doing things behind the scenes sometimes that people do not see, and we'll continue those efforts. And again, too, we'll continue to always review and revise. We do it on basically a daily basis. And I told you, I know this Thursday, we'll be meeting with the K-12 principals. And these are the things that are on our agenda. We are always brainstorming ways with which to make this better for our kids. And we have to do it within the guidance, and that's what we're trying to do. So we're open to all of those different models. And if there's ways we can make it better, we will certainly make steps with which to do so.
Thank you, Dr. McKenna, and thank you, Mrs. Van Slyce, too, for just pointing out that, yes, we're the policy-making board, as people continue to point that out to us, but that does not give us the authority to set policies that are outside of the law. And so because we are a public school, our oath is to follow the law of the New York State Constitution and the guidelines that come down from the New York State Education Department. Surprisingly, today, when I was flipping through the news, I saw that new guidelines were released today from the CDC. And I read through them quickly. And what I wasn't seeing so much was so much focus on the social distancing. I was seeing still the focus on the masking, the hygiene, the precautions, the screenings in the morning, and making sure that we discourage anyone from attending school if they're sick. But, that just came out today, and my understanding of just knowing the way things work is now that's going to go to the state. They're going to take a look at that. It'll go down to the county. But we still are going to be sort of at the mercy of the people who make decisions above our heads. And I do also want to point out, there was a parent that talked about us advocating. We have sent letters. Many of us as board members have sent things individually, but as a board, we also sent a letter recently to the Erie County Department of Health Commissioner. So please know that that advocacy is happening. Advocacy can happen by all of us. We all have the ability to advocate. So I encourage parents here joining us tonight that spoke so wonderfully, and even Savannah Hensley, I would love for you to speak on behalf of students and write to the governor and write to our assemblywoman and let them know that, we really feel that our schools are safe and we want to be able to return. Thanks, Dr. McKenna, for explaining the difference between the athletic requirements and the music. It's not a issue of us saying that we value athletics more than music. I don't believe it's an equity issue at the district level, but it is in the eyes of the way it came through, because we have to understand that athletics is run by Section 6 in New York State, and that they've got staff, they've got people, they've got money, they've got a lot of power that advocated for these changes. And I'm hopeful to see what we get in regards to our music program starting soon. I do have 2 quick questions though, because I was taking notes as we had speakers. I wasn't aware that Modified and JV were not being live streamed. I was under the impression that it was all sports. So first I want to just ask, number 1, is that accurate? And if it is accurate, can you tell us what the barrier is? Is it a barrier of manpower? Because we might be able to be creative and have booster clubs have a parent that, they get themselves organized and they each take a game and they go record it themselves. So I just want to ask that question.
Yeah, that is accurate at this time. And there's a variety of reasons why. I think that, there was not just manpower, equipment reasons. And so it was just at this time that we weren't able to make it happen for those particular sports. But, we'll go back and we'll have discussions about it and see if there's ways with which we can do it. We're always, how do you want to say it? Reviewing our policies and practices and trying to improve.
Yeah, I would love to see that happen. And I see board members shaking their head in agreement as well, because when you're a parent and your child hasn't been able to perform for so many months or compete for so many months, and now they can, but yet we can't go see them, and there's no way to view them, that creates, an extra set of stressors. And then I had one more question. I don't remember what my other question was, so I'm going to have to go back to that one. Would you like to go ahead then with the strategic planning update, unless anybody else has a question? Oh, I see Mike's hand. Mr. Biscaglia.
Yeah, I just, to reiterate what everyone is saying, I know it's hard to understand, but I'm a parent of an elementary student. So I feel the people who have spoke tonight. I know we don't answer questions and it's things like that, but I hope they understand we are in this together. And this weekend, I had a phone call with Dr. McKenna and I had to hang up with him right away because, I was doing work with my son who's in 2nd grade and he decided to, be a 2nd grader and get up and run around. And, it was a hectic day, but we feel the pressure as well. I do, even as a board member and as an educator and as a parent of an elementary student. It stinks. Right now, this pandemic stinks. Unfortunately, New York State is a little tougher than other states. I've had conversations with educators in Florida and Georgia that I know, and it's different there because of the 6 feet guidelines. And I agree with what Ms. Van Site says. I know we've sent letters before, but maybe we need to send more. And as fellow board members know, I would gladly develop letters that we can check over and do. And it's not easy at any district. I just want everyone to know that there's problems at the districts that have been mentioned, that I know, that I have close friends, a neighbor that teaches at Lancaster, which has discussed many problems with their elementary. It's not perfect for anyone. That old saying, it's the grass is always greener, I don't know. It's just, we feel it, we understand, and please understand that once those 6 feet guidelines go away, I can guarantee you 100% Williamsville will be right on top of it with the kids back 5 days with all confidence. I can say that. I'm not going to say that for the other 8 board members, but I'm sure you would all agree. And I know Dr. McKenna would agree. It's difficult. We hear you. Please understand that, and we're living it too. I wanted to express that. It's hard to understand, but we're living it with you side by side. And it may not seem like that every day, but But I actually agree with Ms. Van Sice. Maybe a little more pressure would help.
I agree with you, Mike. I just want to say too that, you know, I'm also a parent. My daughter's in high school here in the district. So I absolutely want her in school 5 days a week. I can tell you that unequivocally. So I understand from, I'm in your shoes too. I can tell the parents that I live it every day as an administrator here and as a parent. And you're absolutely right, Mike. I agree with you 1,000%.
Dr. McCleary?
I was just going to add, we talked about this a few minutes ago and kind of sidetracked, but I did want to add, when we were talking about making our voices heard, we do have potential meetings with Assemblywoman McMahon and Senator Rath. It's just when you involve a lot of people, even in good times, the scheduling is kind of wonky. But for those who are saying we should be doing more and talking and writing letters, again, I just wanted to put in that as soon as somehow the schedule works, we will be meeting with our state people. Thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out. And it's important because we have an Erie County Association of School Board Liaison here on our school board. I think we have a couple of them, and they go to those meetings regularly, attend on Zoom as of now. And there's advocacy that happens at that level. So when I give my president's report every month and I bring up ECASB and NSBA, there's advocacy that happens at both the local county level and the state level every single month that we as a board are a part of. So please know that, that's what advocacy is. It's picking up the phone and it's calling your lawmakers and it's calling the governor's office. And those phone calls carry a lot of weight and they often only take a couple minutes to make. So, that's really what we need at this point for those decisions to change. Dr. McKenna, do you want to go on to strategic planning?
I would, but I think Mr. LeMay has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, I was just going to agree with you. I mean, I sat through the Capitol Conference last week for NSBA, and we actually had question and answers with, at the time, the interim commissioner of education, Betty Rosa, and Dr. Lester Young, who's the chancellor of the state regents. And so these are some of the things that were addressed. Later that morning, we also met with the Deputy Secretary of Education for the governor. And again, some of these same concerns were brought up to them. So we are advocating and doing exactly that. It's just maybe not necessarily in front of the public's eye so much because we're doing it kind of behind the scenes, but that's part of what I volunteered when I came onto this board to do, was to be an advocate and be a voice for all of our parents and children in the district for all of these types of concerns. So.
Thank you, Mr. LeMay. Well said. Dr. McKenna.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. LeMay as well, that I think we are all fierce advocates. And sometimes a lot of folks don't see all the things we do behind the scenes, but we are actively engaged. So good point, Mr. LeMay. I appreciate that. Now the strategic planning update, this is very brief. Tomorrow we're meeting. The Strategic Planning Committee is meeting tomorrow, March 10th, and we're excited to be getting back with the committee and moving our strategic plan, down the field. And then we have, February 9th, we're meeting tomorrow, and then we meet again March 10th. So we are very excited about these upcoming meetings. We've met with the administrators and we've met with people on the team. And now tomorrow we meet with the entire team. And we are excited. Our plan is to scaffold this in for the remainder of this year so we can really hit the ground running at the beginning of next year with a full implementation of our strategic planning model in place. So I just want to let everyone know that we are moving along very well, and we'll keep you updated each month.
Sorry, I was muted. Dr. McKenna, do you want to go on to the calendar now? We'll start with the 2020-21 calendar. You're going to talk about Juneteenth.
Yeah, this year is interesting. And Juneteenth, of course, it was adopted as a state holiday just this year. So 2021, school districts were given an option that if we want to celebrate Juneteenth this year, we can. That means we'd have to amend our calendar this year. We've spoken about this regionally as well. They brought it to all the superintendents across the region and basically gave us, told us we have the option that we can either choose to celebrate it this year or not. And it's also on a Saturday this year too. So legally there's not an obligation, even if it was, we don't have a legal obligation because it just came on board and it's on a Saturday. But Juneteenth is a very important holiday, and it's something, I think of what we're trying to accomplish with our diversity committee. And so I think it's worth discussion with the board to see if we would like to change our calendar this year and implement Juneteenth this year. Now, it would be on Friday, I think it is, we have to put it in June 18th. That would be the day, I think it, or is it the 9th? I have to look at but anyways, if we want to do it this year, we have to determine if we'd like to do it. We'd have to do a calendar amendment. Now, we spoke with the principals as far as would it be disruptive to instruction, and right now there would be no regions. That was one of the first things that came up is, if there's regions, we don't know at the end of this year yet, if there would be or not, but there wouldn't, even the state said they're not going to put any regions on that day. And the principals all indicated that there would not be a disruption to any major instructional things that they have planned on that day. So as a board, what I'd like to do is have a discussion with you about whether we'd like to do it this year or not do it this year. My recommendation, I know from speaking with we had an opportunity to speak with the leadership team about this. And what a lot of districts, and I canvassed other districts as well. Some districts have already gone forward and said, yes, they are going to celebrate Juneteenth this year. Other districts have taken the posture that they are going to celebrate Juneteenth this year, but they want to see how the snow days work this year to make sure we have enough days in our calendar. Because it's being added, we have to make sure that we meet the 180-day requirement by the state. So what a lot of districts are doing is they're going to plan on celebrating it depending on if they have the proper days to meet the state requirement. So what some folks are doing, and I think this is something that we should consider, is waiting till April, and then we'll know if we have the dates. Because I'll bet there's not going to be snow days after April. I could be wrong. There might be a snow day after April, and sometimes it has happened. But we could wait and see if we do have the days, and then we could adopt our calendar when we know that we have the proper days. And but I wanted to bring it up to the board for discussion. We had the same discussions, with our leadership team, and we thought that it's important that we bring it to the board because it does have to be amended and adopted by the board if we make this change.
So I'm pulling it up in board docs, and so Saturday, June 19th is the holiday now officially this year.
Yep.
And so what I'm hearing you say is that we would hold Friday, June 18th could then be a holiday, a day off from school for students and staff, as long as we do not use up all of our snow days. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so board members, does anyone want to weigh in on that? I personally support that plan, and I'm really hopeful that you didn't just jinx us and get us a snowstorm in April. But I am fine with that. I don't see an issue with holding off until April to then modify our calendar. Any opposition from board members? Mr. Biscaglia, go ahead.
It's not opposition. I had a quick question. I missed it. I'm sorry. Did you say most districts are waiting till April? You mentioned, Dr. McKenna.
I know many. I know many.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they're waiting till April, but what they're doing is they're going to wait and see if they have the days, or some are going to adopt and make it with a caveat of if we have to take our days, the first day that would go would be Juneteenth. So that's some of the discussion that I've had. And I think a lot of the districts are exactly in the same position we are right now. There's a few that have already adopted, but I would say most are discussing the matter just as we are tonight.
And the reason it would go first isn't because of the significance of the holiday. It's just because of it being just made a holiday after our calendar was approved and after contracts were approved that designate what days they have off. Because I think it's important for people to understand too, this affects all of our staff employees who work under contracts, and their contracts will dictate what days they have off. Okay. Any other feedback from the board? Okay. All right. Would you like to then help us review the 2021-22 student calendar?
Yes, I will. I don't know if are we gonna pull that up or?
No, we have it in board docs, so we
Okay.
have it there for our review. Usually
Oh, there we are.
at this
Very
time,
good.
you just take any questions or concerns regarding the calendar, or you can point out anything of significance.
I think the only thing of significance really for next year would be the addition of Juneteenth. Next year, it would be on a Monday. And so I think, what is that, the 20th, June 20th would be Juneteenth next year. So it would be incorporated and part of our calendar from next year moving on. So that really is the only major change for the calendar for next year. I know Mr. Scanzuzzo is with us here too. And I know, Tony, you helped to develop the calendar. Do you have any insight or anything you'd like to share regarding the calendar?
Oh, I don't know if we can hear
I don't know
him.
if he's there. Well, I think I can speak for him. It really is Juneteenth is really the major addition for the calendar for next year.
And there was a question about the beginning of the school year. I don't know if you're able to slide up to September with the opening of school occurring on a Jewish holiday.
Well, what we've done traditionally in our district is we do a fall recess that is on Yom Kippur. And that's been the tradition from the district for many years. And I know we spoke about that with the leadership team as well when it was brought to our attention. And we don't see any reason to change that in our calendar moving forward.
Okay. And Dr. McKenna, is our calendar in line with Erie One BOCES so that we can keep a consistent school schedule for our kids that use Harkness?
That is correct. We are in sync with Erie One BOCES for those reasons and others. We share a lot of services with BOCES.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone from the board wish to make a comment or question about the calendar review for 2021-22? We're not voting to approve it right now. We're just discussing it. Mr. Lemay?
Yeah, two things. One, I ask this every year because I know students love to hear this. How many snow days are built into this calendar?
I believe if you scroll down to the bottom, could you scroll down? I want to make sure of this. There's next year, there's only 2. And I think that's the interesting thing with Juneteenth. We usually have 3. And so that's the same impact that we have this year. If you notice right now in our calendar this year, we only have 2 days that are in there as well. So that's going to be one of those things moving forward that, it could impact calendars if we have snowy weather.
Ah, now I thought we had more than 2 in the calendar this year. I believe you. Trust me. I thought we had more like 4 or 5 built into the calendar. My mistake then, I guess.
I'll look into that to be sure, because I know what you're saying, that sometimes some of the other days would count, but I'll clarify that, Mr. Lemay.
Okay, then the second question, do we have any clarification as to the April Easter break here? And I'm trying to pull it up here on my calendar, so I apologize.
Spring recess, April 11th through the 18th.
Yeah. What the rationale is on that? Because don't they normally? I guess the first thing that I thought was strange is, why are we getting the Monday the 18th off? Is it because it's the day after Easter?
Those are good questions. That really is right from the BOCES calendar. So we basically just adopted it as it was presented to us. And but we could ask some of those questions, and it does change from year to year. I mean, it's not always the week before. It has varied in the past as well.
Yeah, well, I obviously I remember the 2 weeks off in April, but it usually seems like we get the Good Friday off, and then the whole week after Easter. So it just seems a little flip flop this year. I'm just curious what the rationale is behind that. So okay, but thank you.
No, thank you.
Maybe with it being 1 week later, it'll be 1 week warmer.
Does it have anything to do with possible state testing, the ELA or math? It could be from third grade through 8th grade. Sometimes they do that.
Yeah,
if that helps, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Dr. Balin could comment on if she knows when those tests are right now, but I'm not sure. It very well could be that there are testing implications with the calendar, but I'm not sure if the state testing schedule is out yet that far in advance. So
I would highly doubt that they have their dates for next year since they haven't determined their dates for this year.
Yeah, I would doubt that too, but I did reach out to 3 of the BOCES members. I haven't heard back from them on those same questions, so I'll share them if I do learn them.
yeah, we'll look into it too, Mr. LeMay. And if there's any questions anyone has about the question or any questions about the calendar, please let me know. As I'm reading here, Mr. Scanzuzzo's texting me as we speak. His audio is not working, so he would like to chime in, but he can't at this time. So Tony, maybe next time you can help us. Thanks.
And Mrs. Carey is letting me know that Easter is the 17th. So it looks like we have the week off before. Is that what you were saying, Mr. LeMay?
Yes. Usually we have the week off after. It's a Good Friday and then the whole week off after.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
And I believe it's contractually that we get Easter Monday off. I think that's why that is. I think it's a contractual piece.
Dr. McKenna, that is correct. It's a contractual piece. And as we know, BOCES drives district calendars. So most of Erie County will probably look like this. We don't know what Niagara County looks like because they follow a different BOCES schedule. So we do flip-flop all the time. And Mrs. Leatherbarrow brings up a great point. It's a week later, which means it's probably going to be warmer. And seeing that there's not a lot of traveling going on this year, I can certainly say I will appreciate that next year. But that Easter Monday is very, very standard to have off because it's contractual. So if it was the week before, we know, or the week after Easter, we would have Good Friday off. So,
and Mrs. Van Sice, the bad news, it's the week before now. She was mistaken.
Well, we were mistaken about when Easter was, but we still get a week a little bit later than this year. Okay, I got it.
Perfect.
Any other questions or comments on the timeline? And I'm sorry, I can't see everyone's hands, so just go ahead and shout out.
Okay, thanks. I do. Thank you. I just want to express my concern about the opening day, and it was mentioned that there is a Jewish holiday on that day. I know that we typically follow the BOCES calendar as other local districts do, but occasionally there are days that are different. Some districts start a day after. I'm concerned about starting school on a day where there are certain members of our community that will not send their kids to school that day for a religious observance. And regardless of the religion, I am not personally Jewish, so this doesn't impact me. It doesn't matter to me what the religion is. If we know that a significant group in our community is unable to come, I'm just concerned about thinking that some of our kids and maybe even faculty members would not attend the first day of school, would not be able to attend, or that there would be a conflict there. So I know today is a discussion, and for us to look at it, it's something that concerns me. I'm wondering if it's a possibility for our district to look back at this calendar and see if there's a way that rather starting on that Tuesday, we can start it Wednesday so that all of our staff and students can be present for the first day of school, and possibly look to the calendar year to see if there's anything we can do so we can still meet that 180-day requirement, but still have a first day of school where everyone can attend.
Well, Mrs. Beeger, I'd like to comment on that real quick, because we did talk about that today at our leadership team, and we even brought Karen Greco in, who runs our ELL program, and we looked into that, and it really is a long-standing tradition in Williamsville, and from we could see today, it goes back 30 years from what we could see, and it really was based, from what I was told, on the significance, of the day, Yom Kippur, and it was created. With the reason they do it at the time, there was a lot of discussion, there was a lot of community feedback, there was a lot of thoughtfulness put into it. And I know that people felt that a change to move that would cause a lot of negativity and consternation too. And it's been consistent for so many years without any problems or difficulties or issues that I know that the people that we spoke to today felt that the change would could cause more, how can I say it, more negativity and more difficulty, because as I say, it's been a long-standing tradition to have that day. And we do recognize the fall recess.
I don't want to argue one way or another towards or against one holiday or the other, but I appreciate that conversation came up because, while we have past practice, sometimes I think that it's worth a look to be flexible in order to ensure that we're doing what's best for our kids, even if it's just 1 year. And maybe that's a solution. I don't know. I'm not an expert in this religion or what these observances stand for. I just, the thought of starting a school year when we know that all of our students can't attend just doesn't sit well with me. So it's why I brought it up. And if there's ways to look at solutions or even speak with members of that community to determine maybe this is 1 year that we change that, I don't know. It's not up to me to determine the answer, but I do want to express my concern.
Thank you, Mrs. Speaker. I'm going to let Mrs. Kazmarek-Bogner speak.
I just wanted to point out that I believe Rosh Hashanah is actually the Tuesday and Wednesday of that first week of school. It's a 2-day holiday. So it wouldn't just impact the Tuesday, it would also impact the Wednesday. I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention.
Yeah, that was brought to our attention as well, that it's a multi-day, event, Rosh Hashanah. So that was also, I know it was discussed, I believe, again, I wasn't here when they did it, but from what I understand, there was a great deal of discussion and a lot of thoughtfulness put into the decision to make the fall recess on Yom Kippur. And one of the things I know that was expressed to me today was because of the significance of that day.
Right, that Yom Kippur is the holy day, and Rosh Hashanah is like the New Year celebration. Okay, so thank you. And I think it brings up good discussion in that these decisions were made historically based on what our district looked like at a certain moment in time. And our district may now be looking differently. For example, we don't have days in our calendar for Eid or Diwali or other holidays that are celebrated for other groups. So I think it's good that we're having these discussions. And I agree with Mrs. Speaker that past practice isn't always best practice, but it's also important to have that window into why the decision was made once upon a time. Okay, so I'd like to move our agenda along, since this was just discussion. We can continue this for our next month. And we are on policy updates. So the revised policies 1330, 1620, 1640, 5670, and 7420, they were all read for the first time last month, and they were tabled. I'd like to keep them on the table for another month because one of our board members, Mrs. Kazmarek-Bogner, has pointed out that we could use some edits with the pronouns so that we can have some more gender neutral pronouns in our wording of a few of those policies. So if there is no opposition, I would like to keep those policies tabled so that we can revise the wording, modify the language, so that all pronouns going forward with all of our board approved policies are gender neutral in nature. All right, and so then I am going to now go on to the next one, which is the final approval of the ones that we had on the table from last month. So I will ask for item F. Is there a motion for the first reading of revised policies 3420, which is a non-discrimination and anti-harassment in the district, 5681, school safety plans, and a new policy, which is 6411, use of email in the district as presented. And this is for a first reading. May I have a motion, please? Thank you, Mr. LeMay. And second, Mr. Borenstein. Is there any discussion on these policies? And please note, this is with a note that the language changes will be made to be gender neutral with their pronouns in the future. Mrs. Kazmarek-Bogner, did you have your hand up? You're going to say that, weren't you? Okay, got it. And thank you. I just want to thank Ms. Kazmarek-Bogner for bringing that to our attention as a board. It's a small change, but it's a meaningful change, and it's the right thing to do humanely. Mr. LeMay, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, did we not already have, I mean, where was the email policy previously? I know we had an email policy, so this is a new policy this month and I've read it. But weren't a lot of these already covered under a different policy somewhere or?
Yeah, so these are all revised. The only one.
The email is a new policy.
Oh, the use of email as district as presented.
6411 is a new policy, correct?
Right, so that's the new one. We don't, according to this, we don't have a policy that addresses that.
Did it fall under something else? Was it under a technology policy or something like that? We're breaking it out?
I couldn't speak to it offhand. I'd have to do some more research, but Mrs. Carey might know. Go ahead, Mrs. Carey.
Yes, there was a revision from BOCES and that came across, and I noticed that we didn't have that policy number in our district, and I did some research. The other districts close to us did have that policy. This policy came up in maybe 2015, and that was before Carey, as I would say. So I brought it up, and it is a new policy due to it wasn't in our policy database.
Okay, and I appreciate that. I'm glad that we're getting it in there, but I could have swore this falls under, we've had something, and maybe a computer use policy, or maybe it's not an actual formal district policy. Maybe it's an agreement employees and staff sign when to know that, the email and the proper use of it, and et cetera, et cetera.
We have the computer usage agreements.
I'm betting it probably falls under there.
But I'm not sure if that's more regulation.
Right.
It's under it's called the acceptable use policy.
Acceptable use policy. Okay. And that's board policy, or is that board regulation or district regulation?
I believe Ms. Cooper can speak to that. Ms. Cooper?
We're putting you on the spot, Ms. Cooper.
Hi there. Yes, our acceptable use policy is, I believe it's under a different section of board policy. I'm trying to look that up for you now, but I know that it is in our new hire policy package that each staff member gets upon hire. So we do have some language that speaks to that, and I will get the information for you about what number policy that is.
That's okay. I just wanted to make sure, because it just seemed ironic that suddenly we're coming out with an email policy 20 years after email's been invented.
You're exactly right. Yep, we had some prior language on that, and this is an expansion on what we had in our existing manual.
Okay, well, that's good. That's fair. Thank you.
So, Mr. LeMay, as I was scrolling while Ms. Cooper was speaking, I do see 6410, staff use of computerized information resources. I don't know. I haven't opened it and read it. That might fall under that, but it's good that these are first readings, because we can go back and do some research and look into it for next month.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. Did we vote on that one, Mrs. Carey, or did we just take the motions?
Just have a first and a second on that.
Okay, so we have our first and second.
We're now in discussion, and now you can vote. Yeah.
Thank you. So approval of the first reading. All in favor? Thank you. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 800. Is there a motion now to please table the revised policies 3420, 5681, and new policy 6411 for a second reading and adoption at the March 9th regular board meeting? Thank you, Mr. LeMay first, Dr. McClary second. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried 800. Item 12 is finance. May I have a motion, please, to resolve to approve the Erie One BOCES installment purchase agreement as presented? Thank you, Mr. Bornstein. Mrs. Beeger, second. Thank you to Mr. Matursky in your office for all the information that's provided in board docs about BOCES. It's very helpful. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what we pay for. All right, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions, motion carried unanimously 800. If you have any liaison reports, please send them to Mrs. Carey. Does anyone wish to make any comments about their recent liaison meetings? Thank you. Legislative matters, I don't have anything listed, but I know Mr. Biscaglia brought up advocacy during our superintendent report. Does anyone wish to comment further on legislative matters? Would you like me to go forward with an email or a letter in advocacy for eliminating the social distancing requirement? Mrs. Van Zies.
I'm wondering if we should, as we have done in the past, put email addresses up of our assemblywomen, senators, so that our community, our parents can also have this information and also feel free to contact them, as well as phone numbers. When we've attended the legislative breakfast, and we had many of our assembly women and men there, they told us the best way, I guess, to advocate was calling, or the phone calls, as well as some emails. But they did say that, and having multiple people. So I think right now, the more people doing it, more parents, community members, board members, it takes a village here. So I think it would just be the louder we are, the better it would be. So if we can have that information on our website, I think some parents would be very willing to go ahead and express their concerns, knowing that this is where we really have to direct all of our energy.
Thank you, Mrs. Van Zies. And while you were speaking, I have 2 computers I'm working off of. I did just check our website. So if you go from our homepage and you click on resources, which is one of the tabs at the top, legislative contact information is listed. I would like to then request that phone numbers be added and that all of that information be double checked for accuracy to make sure it's updated. I think I see some things that need to be changed. Okay, there's just a few names that have recently changed. So I'd like to ask that that be done. Thank you, Mrs. Van Zies, for requesting that. And actually, I didn't know that this was even up there as a tab, so I'm appreciative of the effort that this information is here, and now we just have to make sure that it's accurate and updated. Thank you for bringing that up. Any other questions or comments on legislative matters at this time? Mrs. Kazmarek-Bogner?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment in terms of the social distancing guideline for 6 feet. I know you said that you saw updated CDC guidance that came out today. I haven't seen that yet, so I'm interested. I've been looking for it, so I don't know how I missed that, but I'm looking forward to seeing what the updated guidance from the CDC is in terms of school reopening. I do know that the World Health Organization's distancing guideline is 1 meter. So that's a little over 3 feet. It's like 3¼ feet, as opposed to the 6 feet social distancing requirement or guideline, I should say, that's coming from the CDC and then through New York State Department of Health and Erie County Department of Health. So I just wanted to make that as a comment. So I believe, we all want things to be safe. We still want people to be, the reason that the spread isn't occurring in the schools is because we have so many safety things at play already. So I don't want anyone to get the idea that we want to just return 5 days to school, not wearing masks, back to normal. At least from my perspective speaking, I believe that we still need to be following the guidelines and the guidance. I do believe there is some research to support that the social distancing component could be less than the 6 feet that has been required up to this point. And I would support any advocacy, and I know we do have a meeting hopefully scheduled with our legislators soon where we can discuss this further. So thank you.
Absolutely. And the CDC thing I saw was just a media blast, and it looked like in the press release that there would be some type of a meeting tomorrow that would be more public. So I think it's all new information, and we're just going to have to wait for a little bit, because even when I opened it up to read it, it wasn't super clear as to what exactly it was going to mean for us as New Yorkers. So I appreciate that. Looking at my agenda, item 15 is curriculum. Any matters to discuss for curriculum at this time? I will point out that next month we will be having a presentation on student achievement. Dr. Balins and her office will be heading that presentation up.
I was going to have Dr. Balin just say a little bit about what she's going to be doing next month, because I think it's an important update. So Dr. Balin, I'll let you give an update.
Thank you. Hi, Dr. Balin.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Good evening, board members and our colleagues, as well as our audience that's with us this evening, parents and colleagues. I did want to mention, thank you for the opportunity next month. As the public and the board may already be aware, typically we do a presentation in September related to our outcomes from the previous year. Many of the changes that we've experienced as New Yorkers and in New York State, as students and educators have already been articulated with a lot of the testing that was postponed and canceled. We are still waiting on some things for this year. So we may have that information by time our next meeting happens in March. But needless to say, we will be presenting some information on some of the outcomes that we do have at our disposal, and also really ways that we are connecting students and monitoring progress of learning. And that happens in a lot of different ways. We've heard formative components mentioned, and there's a lot of ways that we check for understanding and monitor the learning that is occurring. And I think someone earlier in the meeting mentioned about the responsiveness to students. So you'll hear more about that next month, and we look forward to presenting that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Balin. Anyone else wish to speak on curriculum? Okay, moving on. Does anyone have any, let's see, personnel? Any personnel items? Nope, none listed. District facilities and support, item 17. Dr. McKenna, I will turn it over to you and Mr. Matursky for a facility update.
I will turn this right over to Mr. Matursky.
Thank you, Dr. McKenna. So this is just a really brief summary on our capital project work. What I have put in the outline is just a few pictures regarding the music additions. As the board said, many of you were able to visit the North High School addition. That work is continuing on very well, as is East High School and South. South is a little bit behind due to some unforeseen construction items which we're working through. And in the end, we certainly hope that everything will be ready per our regular construction timeline. In addition to that, the security and infrastructure project is development of the plans is going on, and we plan to actually submit them to the State Education Department in March, and then hopefully have approval sometime in late summer, early fall to do a bid again later in the fall. And that would be our ideal bid timeline where we would get the best pricing as we prepare to do work the following summer, which would be 2022. Regarding one more item I put in there that because the board is aware, but it's not one of the projects that seems to be always discussed. It's the New York Power Authority project. And that's an energy saving project. And I showed that one of the first items that they're working on, which doesn't impact instruction at all in our buildings, is putting new LED lights in all of our parking lots. And so I just showed you one picture of the light in front of the district office parking lot that has been changed. And that work is ongoing. And we will be going back to second shift in the buildings as we continue into the spring with that work. And it should be completed by December. So that's a quick summary on the facility update.
Thank you very much, Mr. Matursky. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Okay. There are no special needs and student activities items to discuss. Does anyone have anything they wish to bring up under committee of the whole? All right, seeing none, we will now conduct our second public expression. with the same rules as outlined for our first public expression. Anyone wishing to address the board may electronically raise their hand at this time. The same rules that Dr. McCleary read earlier this evening do apply. I'm going to click on my attendees, see if I see any hands go up. All right. Looks like we have 16 panelists and 33 people still online. I do not see any hands raised. Moving on. We are now going to be recessing our regular board meeting and beginning our budget work session. So we're not going anywhere. It's just a formality that we need to do. Would someone like to make a motion to recess the regular board meeting at this time? Mr. Lemay, thank you. Mr. Borenstein, second. All in favor on the recess? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried unanimously 8-0-0. All right. Banging my little gavel, I would like to call the budget work session to order. All board members are present except for Mr. Mecca. And item 23B, Dr. McKenna and Mr. Matursky, would you like to start the 2021-2022 budget development presentation at this time?
Yes, we've been, thank you, Ms. Leatherberry. We've been hard at work reviewing our budget, and I know Mr. Matursky and his team has been exceptionally busy during this time, and I'm going to turn it over to him right now. Mr. Matursky, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. McKenna. So this is our next step in the budget development process. And we initially had our program continuation items. We brought those forward at the January meeting. I also brought forward an early estimate on revenue at that meeting, and that was prior to the governor providing his state aid reports. And then we mentioned and provided a mandatory, non-mandatory listing without any dollar amounts attached to them, but just a list, not prioritized. So tonight we're continuing the discussion, and a lot more information has come in, and it comes in on a daily basis, as you will find out tonight. If we could just please go to the next slide. Thank you. So this is the update of last January slide on what our program continuation increases are. So again, defining what that means, that's to try and keep our current programs that we have today, keep them going for the following school year. And we start with a program budget of this year of $199,199,730. And then we add only the items that we need to sustain those programs. And of course, the largest item is our contractual agreements with our employees. And there's some positive news there. That has actually gone down by a certain amount of $350,000. So that's a benefit to us. The FICA amount stays the same, and our amount for the teacher retirement systems, that's also gone down by $50,000. And then lastly, in January, we had our meeting with Erie 1 BOCES representatives. And so although that budget is not yet final, that was able to be reduced by $85,000 from the initial estimate. So that $485,000 reduction provides a adjusted and new required expense increase of $5,821,237, which results in a working budget of $205,020,967, or 2.92%. I want to also draw our attention to the second side of this report, which is looking to the following year. And you're going to hear me speak about the following year a few times in this presentation, because what we're doing this year and the type of aid we're receiving and the type of federal money that we're receiving is not always going to be the same for the next year. But you'll notice that in employee salaries, that amounts almost half of what it is for this year. And that's because the increase is looked at as being a flat 2% on base salaries. And we have a lot of agreements that are expiring. So, you know, it's not exactly an easy thing to negotiate, but it is something that we, I think, have to strive for as a maximum increase. We also have health insurance increases that are likely to happen. And again, in the last meeting I discussed, we do not know the impact of health insurance costs on as of COVID. And then we very likely will have BOCES increases of $400,000. So we need to be looking forward as well as looking at this year's budget as we're doing this budget development process for the 21-22 school year. So if we could please transition to the next slide. So this is going to be interesting because you're seeing two revenue pages here. This is the original page that was done. And it was done before, as I said, information is changing almost on an hourly basis as we verify and get more information from New York State and from state reference areas. So the numbers here that are different from the past, these are solid estimates that we have based on the governor's state aid runs specifically for our school district. So I just want to point out a couple items here. You're seeing, first of all, foundation aid does not change. That's been something the governor has stated. That remains the same as this year. You're seeing a little increase in our excess cost aid, which is really for special education student aid. And then you're seeing several blanks. You're seeing nothing in transportation, BOCES, or software, library, and textbook. And the reason for that is the governor has combined all of those into what is now termed services aid. And that has some negative repercussions for us, which I'll be explaining again a little bit later, but just keep that in mind. So that service aid is $6.5 million. Add our building aid to it of 6.6. And then you see that there are two numbers. One that says COVID supplementary stimulus of $9,607,193. And then I've deducted it. So it nets out to zero. So that means that our state aid for next year is currently estimated and budgeted at $39,922,544. Going through the rest of this, there's some positives and negatives. I'll start with the pilots. We received information from the Amherst Industrial Development Agency that we have several agreements that are going off the schedule and only a couple going on, and the loss is greater than what is being added back to it. So the amount budgeted in that category has to be reduced. The positive side is that's reduced, and those dollars roll onto the normal assessment rolls for the town. And what that does is it also factors into our tax cap formula, and that allows us to increase our tax cap number, which you'll see is also occurring. And the same thing, if you go down to sales tax, there's a benefit there. That's up $1 million. That's again based upon more information, actual revenues received from Erie County. They've been stronger than what was originally thought. And that will be really looked at closely in the next 2 months before a final estimate is set, because we want to see what the next payments will be if there's any dip in them. But right now, that's a good indication. And then the rest of those items in the other revenue areas basically remain the same. So going down to the property tax levy, you're seeing that that's a little bit increased, and I'll go over the tax cap at the next meeting, but that's increased a little bit. So essentially, you're seeing that the difference between this budget right now and last year's budget is a loss of $2,637,380. So that's kind of the step one. That wasn't too bad. And then we're going to talk about what really happened over Monday and Tuesday. So if we would transition to the next revenue slide, now you're seeing a couple things here that I felt were extremely important for the Board of Education in our community to see right now as we work on developing the preliminary budget. And the new information involves, I'm starting with that $9,607,193. That is called CRRSA. That was approved by the federal government and provided to our state, and that's our allocation to Williamsville. And that actually would be able to be used over 2 years. So under normal situations, I would be recommending to use half of that dollar this year in the 21-22 and save the other half for the 22-23 year. But this is not normal. And I think the critical piece is all the other numbers in this stay the same, except when you go down to what you see in our tax levy. If you go down there, you're seeing the levy amount like I had calculated. It's the levy with the tax cap increase. And you're seeing a deduction of $8,683,679. That is a New York State reduction, and it's based on STAR revenue. So we all know that on our school tax bills, we've been getting a reduction for STAR. So if I were to use an example, you have a $5,000 tax bill and you see a STAR amount of $800. So you as a taxpayer, as a resident of our community in this situation, you'd be paying $4,200. The state would always pay us that additional $800. Well, what the state is saying now, and they're reducing this as a budget reduction, they are no longer going to pay the district that amount. So that $8,683,679 is their estimate of the amount of STAR monies that they paid us. This past school year, the STAR amount that I filed was about 9.3 million. So next year they're considering it to be a little bit less. And so the only way that we can adjust that is you never have seen it before, but we have to show it as a deduction to our actual levy, even though the levy amount will still be what we issue, and the state is not going to tell the taxpayer that they're not going to receive that, but we have to build it into our revenue loss. And that is a concern. And that is something that we have to really deal with. And that is why you're seeing me looking at adding the entire federal stimulus dollars in 1 year to try and offset that the best we can. So the bottom line is, if you look at our current expense budget, which is now updated on this revenue, we have a real budget gap of $6,850,103. And the net levy decrease is 4.07%. And the budget is a minus 0.52% if you go to what our revenue would be with all of those items. So if we would just please transition to the next slide. So again, what I just stated there is shown on this slide. And there still are another caveats as this state budget and the state information. There are a lot of caveats that will occur, and you're going to hear me continue to talk about in the remaining part of this presentation. And the first is, when we come to doing budget savings, we haven't considered any retirements, so that's a positive. We'll be able to include retirements. But on the other hand, a caveat negative is that the state aid amount, not those reductions that I've already discussed, that is planning on the receipt of $6 billion in additional funding from New York or from the federal government. And if that funding doesn't come, there could be mid-year state aid cuts in the 21-22 school year. So if we transition to the next slide, please. So again, looking at some of these concerns, 9,607,193 is reported. I discussed that. It would be nice to use some of that in the following year and go through that installment plan I've kind of talked about in the long range plan and mentioned in previous presentations, but I don't foresee that being an option. I talked about the governor's proposal based on $6 billion. I talked about the services aid categories, and there's two pieces more that need to be shared with that. First of all, in addition to combining them, he freezes the aids on them. So what that means is there's a couple what I would call operational growth areas which is BOCES, which is a lot of the service costs that we do. A lot of it is related directly to student education, our Harkness programs. Some of our special ed students are in those programs. Those costs will rise in forthcoming budgets, and that will not be receiving increased aid. Secondly, our transportation expense. Those contracts also rise. And as a result, that's capped too. So there's not going to be increases when fuel goes up or any other expenses. Those expenses will be 100% borne on future budgets by school districts. Another item is, even though that aid, service aid, seems like it's a great number, $6.5 million, it's actually cut by $923,514 for our district. And the governor has said that if we get over the 6 billion, which again is a question mark, he might restore that part of that aid. So that's another thing. And then the last thing that is a concern is in the governor's budget presentation, he has stated that prior year aid claims will be eliminated. So what does that mean, and what are they, and how do they happen? Well, those prior year aid claims really occur when our information, our fiscal information is completely audited by the state. So that's not the comptroller's audit. That means every September, we file our annual expenses with the state. That's aided in the forthcoming school year. And then it usually takes about 3 years or so from that date before the state's final auditors review your expense reports and come up with, yeah, this was right, or yeah, this was wrong. And if you owe the state money, they take it immediately from you in the next state aid payment that you receive. And if you do not, they owe you money, it goes on this list. And this list for us is $710,719, and it goes back to 2012 claims. So if we transition to the next slide. So now on these slides, this is a continuation again of what we provided last month. This month, you're seeing some dollar amounts, and it's not prioritized. It's all the non-mandatory items. I am not going to go over this in detail, but what I do want to do is just spend 30 seconds, let everyone read through the slides, and then I'll talk a little bit about them. So just kind of look at this one for a little bit. Okay, if we could transition to the next slide, please. Okay, transition to the next one, please. Okay, transition to the next slide, please. Okay, transition to that next slide, please. Okay, the next one. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, next slide. I think we have one more. Oh, that was it. So, of course, none of those items are items we want to address, and they are estimates. Some of them, if you were able to read it, I know it's fast. The items are all posted, will be posted on our website, so everyone can take a more careful look at them. But, you know, the point I wanted to make is that of that first column, and again, there's variables in how those items were calculated, the total is just under $20 million. And so you're looking at, you know, this year, a budget reduction of about $6,850,000. And certainly there will be some items that we can address to bring that number down. But the key is if we didn't have that $9.6 million that we were using to offset that 8.6 million star reduction, we would have a much more difficult task in front of us. Not that this is an easy task at all, but it's definitely something to consider, and it's also to consider for the future. And that's where the second item I have on this slide is. This was actually per New York State school boards, and many of you may have seen it, but they were doing the same warning that there's a significant financial cliff that will happen in the following year. And that's where I'm saying, from full disclosure purposes, the 21-22 budget development process we're in now is probably going to be a lot easier what we're dealing with than what will be in 22-23. Because think about it, there's no assurance that that $9.6 million that we've applied this year in this budget process, that goes away. So now, how are you going to build that up? And those are the financial challenges that are in front of us. If we just move to the next slide, please. So as we look to do budget reductions, our leadership team has really done a lot of thought-provoking discussion, and we've come up with these items as our guide. We want to, first of all, minimize significant impacts to the core instructional programs. We want to minimize the significant impacts to instructional student supports for educational learning. We do not want to dismantle non-mandatory program structures, because you may have to cut them a bit, but you want to be able to easily put them back in place when things turn to a more positive financial environment. And so allocate reductions in an equitable manner across K-12 and all support areas. Consider proportional reductions over a number of areas rather than a large reduction. And budget reductions must consider that next year you're going to need to do more. So again, stressing the reality of the deficit situation we're under. So we could transition to the next slide, please. So our action items. First of all, receive feedback on our budgets from our school principals via our meetings. We'll be doing that beginning this Thursday with our K-12, and that will continue for the rest of this process. We will receive feedback on our budget reduction items from our community. We have an email set up on our website for our community to provide us with their feedback. We will finalize the non-mandated budget reductions and do a balanced budget for March per our budget development schedule. So we will come up with the reductions. We will balance the budget. If there are any changes that happen to state aid, to revenue, any of those items, that will all be incorporated into the March preliminary budget presentation. And I'd like to just also go into this controller analysis of the executive budget. So we could just go into this item quickly. What you can do is, if you go to that, you can access it. There are really 3 items. It's a good report by the controller. And really, there are just 3 items I wanted to point out. And they are, first of all, Comptroller DiNapoli is noting that the federal funds are being used by New York State as a substitute for regular general fund expenditures. So that's a concern because you're basically using one-time revenues for that. The second thing is that, as I mentioned, the Division of Budget of New York State has the authority to go ahead and to make mid-year budget cuts next year. And then if you go to the very end of this report, you're going to see a paragraph, and then you're going to see some charts. And the charts are identifying the future budget deficits that are there. And there's about a $47.6 billion cumulative deficit up to the 2025 year. So 5 years into the future, about 17.6 billion in the final year. So this is something that we need to be aware, because if the state isn't in good fiscal condition, it's going to be passed down to school districts. And so again, as we prepare our budget, that is something that we need to be very careful about. And then the next slide, please. So before we get into the discussion, there are a couple items I want to just talk about. And one thing that a lot of people will be saying is, well, what about your fund balance? What about your reserves? And how are you going to use them? And shouldn't you be using them? And the answer is, we will be using our fund balance. That will be part of the solution, but it will be on the expense side. I would not recommend appropriating any new fund balance on the revenue side this year. We have about $7.9 million in unassigned, unallocated fund balance. And I would recommend at this point that that probably be held off and used as an addition to the 5.4 that's currently budgeted next year, because you're losing 9.6. So that's part of the way we can do that step down process. But that too is a one-time revenue. So again, even using fund balance is a concern. The other question that will probably rise up is, well, what about your reserves? We have $67 million in our reserves. However, half of that, 33 million, is for capital projects, and a lot of that is already spoken for in the current music project as well as the security project. So of the remaining 33 million roughly, they can only be used per law at this point in time for what the reserve was established for. So again, if you have a workers' compensation reserve, you can only expense workers' compensation expenses of it. If you have a reserve for the retirement systems, you can only pay retirement system expenses. So the way the laws are written right now, those reserves can only be used for those purposes. And again, I'd recommend holding off and using those for the following year when you really are going to need it. And the last thing I just want to address is something we heard in our earlier public expression about capital projects. Capital projects, there's a large misconception there on capital projects. And it's, well, why don't you use that money to pay for teachers or that? That's not the way it works. Capital projects are approved by the community, and the district can only use the money for the capital project. So there's another aspect of it, though, that's even more important. And that is that of those capital projects, we get aid on them. And you saw that I mentioned building aid earlier on in the presentation when I was listing the type of aids. Well, that aid is paid to us over a 15-year period of time. And the way we support that is we have to pay off the debt. And we only have $4 million that is in our budget every year that supports all the debt that we have for those projects. If we were to cut the $4 million out, that's a one-time savings. But what you don't understand in many ways, because it's very difficult to provide this information into our community, is that the projects themselves earn aid at 69% over 15 years. And between the capital project for music, which is about 36 million, and the capital project for security, which is 42 million, that will bring the district $54 million in aid over 15 years, as opposed to one-time cut of $4 million. So what would you rather have in the future? Saving a one-time cut of $4 million to fund those projects, or would you want to receive $54 million in the next 15 years? So with that, I've provided you the up-to-the-date summary as of literally today, with some of those revenue informations and the clarification. That's where we stand right now in budget development.
Thank you, Mr. Matursky. I was reading through it over the weekend. I want to point out that, yeah, you took the time to go through it slowly, but that this entire presentation is available in board docs for the public to access. And I'm sure it'll go up on our budget page too, for our budget development. The amount of work that went into listing the costs for each of the non-mandated services, I'm sure it took a tremendous amount of time by you and your staff. So I want to thank you for that. It's not easy to be the person to have to deliver the harsh news. So I just want to thank you for the way that you keep it very factual and provide the highest level of information that's available to us. My one question is, and I'm not someone who usually likes to draw comparisons, because I always feel like whenever you start comparing yourself to others, you're just opening up yourself to more distress. But how does our situation compare to that of our school district neighbors? Because we often have people making claims about the way we do business in comparison to some of our neighboring districts. Are our neighboring districts, in your opinion, and I know you have extensive conversations with your colleagues in other districts, are they, in your opinion, facing a better scenario, a worse scenario, or about the same scenario that we will be facing?
Well, we will be getting into our normal real budget discussions with all of our business officials in February and March. But I think the key when we're looking at our neighbors is that cut in star aid. And I have the report right in front of me. And I can tell you that Amherst star payment as written was $3.4 million. They're getting a $2.9 million cut. If I go to Sweet Home, they received about 2.9, almost $3 million in star. They're getting a full $3 million cut. So it is similar to what we're seeing. And Clarence, if you look at Clarence, they had a $2.9 million star payment, and they're getting a $2.9 million cut. So their situation with the star issue, which is really, I think, the most devastating item in this proposal. I think without that reduction, we could manage this much, much better. And I know Dr. McKenna and the leadership team, we had a very detailed discussion this afternoon. And this is one of those items that, you know, is a legislative issue. And you know, the budget's not done. Hopefully there'll be some ability to make adjustments, but you know, the dire circumstances are what they are at the state level, and that comptroller's report is certainly something that we need to heed. But yes, I would say that the situation is similar in our districts, and I think that, you know, internally, as I said, when we prepare the preliminary budget, there are some financial items that we can, and I will be able to bring forward as solutions. And I think a key will be certainly the retirement savings that we can attain and receive. And those are going to be where we're going to have to look first and then go from there.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And just for my own clarity, the CRRSA money of $9.6 million, which could be used over 2 years. Are you saying that you will most likely be recommending that we use it all in 1 year because of the reduction from the STAR money?
Correct.
Okay. All right, that's a big piece there. Okay, thank you for that clarification. And this is a learning process for all of us. And I do really thank you, because I know you're not a teacher. I know you're financial guy here, but you do a lot of teaching to all of us and to our community. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else from the board have questions or comments regarding this presentation? I'm going to start with Dr. McCleary, and then I'll just keep going around in order here.
Thank you. And of course, Mr. Matursky, I continue to remain in awe of your knowledge on this topic. It's just, it's fascinating and is appreciated. I reverse it. I also over the weekend looked at the various possible non-mandated items, and in my head, I thought, well, if I was asked to pick, these are a few, that I would recommend. So I'm not going to say right now, oh, here's my viewpoint, let's not do this or let's eliminate that. But I do have one question on the non-mandated lists. There's an item towards the end that talks about, when residents do tax challenges to the town. I believe you said at some other point that our own attorneys also review those challenges to see what we can negotiate or what we can accept. But my question is, what percentage of the time when, and I apologize if you don't know this answer, but like I said, I think you know them all anyway. What percentage of the challenges that our attorneys review end up getting us more money than what the town attorneys review? The reason why I ask that is, could that become a viable cut to not have our own attorneys review these things, or is it certainly worth it because they're finding more developments in our favor? If my question makes sense.
Yes, it does. And I'll go back to history first, because I think that helps answer the question. Going back about 12 years ago, the town was settling tax certiorari claims very quickly. And the idea was they would basically just settle them and provide the claimant, in this case, it's all commercial property owners, with what would be their request for a very limited negotiated agreement. So best example is property is assessed at $10 million and they come in and say it's only worth $5 million. And so there's a negotiating process, and it's not just negotiating, there's actual formulas involved and a lot of other information. But just getting to the point, if the town wanted to settle it quickly, they might say, well, I'll settle for $6 million. Back at that time, when we started to intervene, we would have gotten that maybe settled for $8 million. And that's when we said, so those additional tax revenues were, and then that's in place for 3 years. That's the statutory limit at this point before they can bring another tax certiorari claim. And so that is one of the benefits. The other benefit is that when you have our attorney involved, they are there representing us. They're not representing the town or the town's motives. So many times what you don't actually see when we bring tax certiorari claims and I bring them forward would be that some of those claims have had, number one, the prior year claims allowed to be eliminated. So when they bring claims forward, they always say, well, it's for the past year, it's for the current year, and it's for the future years. We never settle for past years anymore. It's usually current year or going forward. And most of the times, a lot of those claims are for future years. So we don't have to do a payout. So that's the benefit of our attorney being involved. And you see the bills, it's not a huge, highly significant dollar amount over the course of the year. And it does save the district tax revenue, or I should say, bring the district tax revenue. So it's a difficult one, but it's one that if you want to rely on the town's process, because they are the ones who must legally represent the claims. The school district is not the party. We have an interest in it. And so if our interest isn't aligned with the town, that's why we get our own representation.
Thank you. I can see my question being answered, that it is to our benefit to continue to be vigilant. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further questions? Mr. Borenstein.
Thank you. And thanks, Mr. Maturski. It's a lot of information, but you always deliver it in a very accessible way. So I appreciate that. But it is a sobering view forward. And I'm just wondering if you think that the STAR reimbursement is gone forever, or if this is a temporary situation we need to deal with.
Well, that's a good question, Mr. Borenstein, because the taxpayer will still see the exemption. The difference is the district now has to pay for it. That's why we see a deduction. So the state is also wanting to transition all taxpayers from having that deduction right away to the check. And that's the other piece of this. It doesn't really impact our finances, so I haven't presented that information here. But the taxpayer will still see their STAR amounts reduced as long as we have not exceeded the tax cap. When you exceed the tax cap, they no longer qualify for the STAR exemption.
Right. And I think I understood that. My question was really about whether the reimbursement from the state is gone forever and we'll just have to pick it up as from here going forward.
I would say yes. Knowing how the state works, once they make this, it never comes back. You may find something similar that takes its place, but going back to all the other revenue categories that have evolved and changed, service aid is another example. If that does go through, and it's frozen, you're going to find it hard for that to come back in a separate one. It's not impossible. Nothing is ever impossible, but I would say I would not be providing a lot of hope at this point, at least in the next 5 years. After that, maybe if the economy comes back really strong, yes, maybe you would see something there.
Thank you. That does help. Although this is a major hole in school districts' budgets going forward, and you're right to underscore the concern over this particular issue. And we also, all of us, should be aware that this is a major challenge for the school district and all school districts going forward as well. So thanks for the answer.
You're welcome.
Mr. Lemay?
Ms. Maturski, thank you. I know this has been a tough crunching budget and a lot of ups and downs. And I know in the Capitol Conference last week, we were discussing this quite immensely. I know with various members in Albany, the service aid line item is not popular, just as it was not last year. So that does give us at least a little hope that that part of that will get struck down again this coming year, hopefully, as it was last year. But my questions, and I had a bunch, but I'm going to try and only pick just a couple here, were on the budget cut consideration items here. And I kind of grouped some of these together here to ask just very quick generic questions about some of these items. For example, I saw things like eliminate, reduce athletic sports teams, modify JV varsity, reduce music programs, limit student clubs, reduce, eliminate extracurricular programs, et cetera, et cetera. My first question on something like that even being considered is that something that boosters clubs and or, the various interest groups could come back and refund themselves to offset those differences? Because you're not necessarily talking about eliminating, some of these were, but some of these were just reducing. Is that a revenue source that, those communities could reach into if that was something that the district had to accomplish?
Of course, they always have that option, and it would be via a donation. That's how the board would accept that, as a donation. And as you know, board policy when it comes to donation says that it's not for a specific item, but we have had a working process for many, many years that if someone wants to build a playground, the money goes for the playground. If someone wants to donate it for a music program, that goes for the music program. So that's how we would continue to proceed.
Okay, so that gives us some hope there. I saw the transitional union contracts to high deductible health insurance plans for new hires. Is that even really feasible? And is that something that would be a permanent going forward, or would be something like a temporary, and when the budget years and 5, 6, 7 years down the road get better, we could renegotiate that and bring it back down to other terms?
Well, I would say that, and I think this is the entire negotiating teams, and because it has to impact all contracts, it's not something that you can necessarily require, is what I would say at this point. It would be an option. And a lot of what we're hearing in the health insurance industry is, in the private sector, this is now really the new normal. They're providing these high deductible plans, and they're structured in a manner where they're beneficial for, especially for younger employees. So again, I wouldn't say it's something you're going to require, but it is a negotiating. And that's why, as you see in some of these, it states that this is not available for the current year, or could that, because remember, this is a long-term issue with the reductions and the cuts in the funding. It's not just going to be this year and next year. The comptroller report that I said is going out 5 years. And so I think you have to minimally think about it. And the state aid, once that, deficit comes through, it's not going to be refunded immediately. Hopefully quicker than the last time we did it in 2010, which took 8 years. But I think you have to be aware. So those are more of a future planning item, I would say, than an immediate fix.
Right. No, and I understand that in your note. And I think it's alarming that the state is relying so heavily on federal money to balance their own budget and give us money. So that in itself is a scary misnomer or indication of where we're at. So a lot of these maintenance items here, repairs, reduce grass mowing 50%, eliminate painting lines, only do the bare minimum. Is that more of a short-term cost savings, and it will actually hurt us more down the road because we're not doing that maintenance more up front? Or you think it would offset?
I would agree 100% with that.
Okay. 2 more, and then I'm done with these questions. The eliminate the middle school 1-to-1 program. That was $1 million. That's a pretty big ticket item. Is that just a 1 year? I guess I was
1 year. That's a 1 year fix, but again, I put that in there. Some of these things you're going to see are items because it's a possibility, right, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's an instructional thing that would be doable from our program perspective. And that's why even in the transportation items, I put in there extend routes, which means you're putting buses more. Well, we can't do that in a COVID situation.
Right.
That's a couple years after COVID. But we wanted to be as complete and thorough in the list as we could. And some of those items, we realize that we're not going to be doing that. I mean, there's a lot of them on there that they're just no's, but we have to look at it as a holistic, comprehensive items and have those discussions.
So I guess my question on the 1-to-1 is the $1 million. That's a 1 year savings. Is that assuming that we have to buy $1 million worth of new 1-to-1 devices for our middle schools next year?
Our normal replacement cost every year is we have to buy about 1,000 devices. We do 900 or so. So, but we buy them on IPAs normally.
Right.
So it's not a full $1 million. That would be the cost for 4 years of full replacement that you're seeing in $1 million, because it's about $250,000 spread over that period of time on the BOCES IPAs. So that would be if you got rid of it and you didn't do it. Now, it would probably be $250,000 a year savings for 4 years, then you're done. But again, that's probably not something that is truly viable, especially considering how many devices we've had to put out for remote instruction in other areas and not just middle school.
Yep, no, I fully understand. My last question then was on the reducing the band payment. Again, that's obviously a one-time savings of $1 million, but what does that actually cost the district a few years from now by doing that?
Well, that's more of a complex answer, and I'll give it to you in 2 phases. First of all, when you are paying down a band, what you're able to do is reduce future interest costs to the bond borrowing. So if you're able to pay down the band, whether it be $1 million in over a 3-year period of time, so 1 million each year, let's say, you figure out what the interest cost savings is over a 15-year period of time of that $3 million. And granted, interest rates now are lower, but normally it comes up to a few $1 million, much more than what you would be doing in your band payments. So that's answer part A. Answer part B on that is that pay down amount is what has allowed our district to utilize that $4 million I mentioned earlier that supports our capital project in the debt to buy actually more capital projects in the future. So we have sustained our capital project program by doing this pay down process, having to save money on the interest payments, and at the same time lowering the final amount of our bond borrowing, which is the permanent financing, and then allowing us to go forward to the community in our next project, which brings more aid into our school district in the future, and with the same amount of money in our general fund budget. And that's the part B part, which is important to us. And it really is, I'd say, the keynote part of how we function when it comes to capital project financing.
Right, right. So the bottom line on half to almost 3/4 of what I just asked you are all short-term gains with long-term losses. I mean, we're going to lose more money than we save. We just get a short impact, a short financial gain.
That's the case in a lot of these, and it also is a short-term savings for potentially a long-term instructional impact too, on other areas. And I think that's why in the areas that we said how we're going to go about this is you don't dismantle, you maybe adjust and reduce so that you can replace and add back to it. That's what we really have to do here.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And if it's okay with the board, I'll stop discussion so that we can give time for anybody from our community to now weigh in, because it is going on 10 o'clock and I don't want to keep anybody from our community waiting that would like to speak on this. So at this time, we are having a public forum for the purpose of the budget only. Anyone wishing to address the board in regard to the budget may electronically raise their hand at this time. And I'm clicking on our attendees. I see Kelly Tokash. Let me go ahead.
Hi, I just have a question about the STAR tax reduction and how that is going away. I believe you mentioned earlier that the budget is not set in stone. Is that something the governor could change in his budget, or is that money definitely not coming to school districts? Is that set in stone?
The New York State budget is not set in stone. It only is set in stone once the legislators approve it and then the governor comes to an agreement, and that has to be done by April 1st. So it's not impossible, and I would say we are all hopeful that something in that STAR area changes positively for all school districts, including us.
I'd just like to weigh in here too, because we had a conversation about that today. And we talked earlier in the meeting about advocacy. This is where advocacy can really come in handy. We really need to advocate with our legislators to restore the STAR funding. And I know Mr. Matursky and I had a conversation earlier, and we are going to reach out to our legislators for just that particular reason, because it's critical to our budget. So I'd like to tell Kelly and everybody out there that is something to advocate for at this time. It would be very important. That's how we could make a real difference in this budget.
And to that point, during the meeting, Mr. Filipowski texted me, and he's updated all of the contact information on our district website. So under resources, which is one of the headers going across the top is a banner. Under resources now, when you click on resources, you can get all of our legislators, all of our government officials, including the governor's office. It's got phone numbers and emails now, and they're all up to date. So thank you, Kelly, for that. Did you have anything further you wanted to add, Kelly?
I mean, if the STAR money does come back to the district, would we then be able to split the federal money over 2 years and maybe help offset the 2022-2023 school year, because that is almost a scarier year in the budget?
That's exactly what I would do.
Great.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much. I also see Jonathan Rich has his hand up. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, you're good.
Perfect. So I guess one of the things I would say, Mr. Matursky, or I don't know who would be responsible for providing this. Obviously, if we're talking about increasing class sizes, we don't want to do anything that would impact students' ability to learn or teachers' ability to teach. So a breakdown of what that actually means, and are we going from an average of 15 to an average of 19, or an average of 18 to an average of 23? I think that would be a good distinction to make. And then the second thing is obviously just, across the country, we've seen unprecedented economic difficulty in the last year or so. And I think, with some of the other contractual discussions that we need to make, I think we do need to look at teacher pay, but we also, again, don't want to create a situation where we aren't attracting the teachers who, are the quality of teachers that Williamsville expects. And so I know that these are incredibly hard decisions to make. I just think that we definitely need to keep everything on the table, because, looking at some of these numbers and hearing about what the situation is going to be in 2022, very, very difficult discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan. Is there anyone else from the board that has, or from the public rather, online? I see there's 18 attendees. Does anyone else wish to raise their emoji hand? I'm seeing one hand up, but I can't see the name. Does anybody else see that? Oh, Darlene McClay?
Hi, I just have a quick question. We looked at a lot of opportunities to cut in an effort to try to balance the budget. And my question is, I don't know if it's to you, Mrs. Leatherbarrow, or to Mr. Matursky, but has anybody reached out to the WTA to see what, to bring the teachers to the table to see what their suggestions are and what cuts they're willing to make? I know we talked about the high deductible plan for new teachers, but clearly I think that's, as was discussed in the private sector, that's common for new employees, old employees, all employees. Is that something that we've discussed with the WTA for all of the teachers?
Thank you, Ms. McClay, for that question. It wouldn't be appropriate for the board to reach out to the WTI, because that would be something the superintendent would do, but I'll let Dr. McKenna answer for that part.
Sure. Well, we've had some discussions with all the units. We have a leadership. We've had one of those meetings, but we haven't had any, how can I say it, specific reductions at this point in time that we've asked anyone to do. And we're still looking at it ourselves as administration. Not to say that can't happen in the future, but we have not had specific conversations with our units yet. We just had some preliminary conversations with all the units, just sharing with them the severity of the situation moving forward. But everything's on the table moving forward.
Thank you. Ms. McClay, did you have anything to add?
No, I just want to thank Mr. McKenna, because certainly if we're looking at cutting programs for the students, I would expect that the teachers will be at the table making a contribution as well, and that they will be asked of and expected to contribute to this process and this challenge that our district has. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to point out too that the list of non-mandated services and all of the cuts, that last slide was really important, I think, to this conversation, because I don't want, us sharing all that information is really an effort to be extremely transparent. I don't know of other districts that are going to this length to put a price point at every single thing that's non-mandated. But I also don't want it to be confused as us proposing that this is something we're going to cut. So for example, class sizes came up. No board member has suggested tonight that we cut class sizes. And when I look at this last slide, it says minimize the significant impacts to instructional student supports for educational learning. Okay, and that's really something that, when we talk about values, and Dr. McKenna always talks often about our values, missions, and goals. This is where that strategic planning conversation becomes really real, right? Because this is where we talk about what do we value as an educational community, and our actions then have to match our values. And so I want to thank Mr. Matursky and Dr. McKenna for their leadership throughout this, and the board for their participation. And we want to make sure that, as Ms. McClay said, that all stakeholders are included in that conversation, and definitely our employees, because there are opportunities here for us all to be part of the solution. Thank you for that. Is there anybody else? I see 17 people still online. Any more hands up? Does anyone else wish to speak? I want to make sure I'm providing an opportunity for anyone here. I see half of you are employees, looking at the names. Thank you for being with us. I don't see any other hands up at this time. Practicing my good teacher wait time. All right, so I'm going to stop it there because I don't see any other hands going up. And I'm going to pause conversations. I know this has been a lot and really, really heavy. 10:06 is a good place for most of you to be able to leave. And at this time, I'm going to say, would someone like to make a motion to return to the regular board meeting? I need motions to go back to the board meeting. Dr. McClay, thank you. Or Dr. McClary, thank you. And
excuse me, but isn't the motion to return to executive session?
No, first we have to return to our board meeting, and then we go into executive session.
Pardon me, Mrs. Leatherbarrow. It's
adjourn the work session.
You got it.
Got it. All right. Thank you. All these formalities. So first we're going to adjourn the budget work session, and then we will motion back into our meeting, and then motion back out into executive session. So would someone like to make a motion to adjourn the budget work session? I'm going to take Dr. McClary as a 1, Mr. Borenstein as a 2. On that motion, all in favor? Thank you. I see no opposed. Motion carries 8-0-0. Now, would someone like to make a motion to return to the regular board meeting? These are all formalities we follow under Robert's Rules of Order. Thank you, Mrs. Beeger. And Mrs. Kazmir-Bogner, second. All in favor on that? Seeing no opposition, motion carries 8-0-0. All right, so we will now be going into our second executive session. For those in the public watching, when we come back, we will not be on video. However, the minutes will reflect when we return, and we will not be taking any other actions tonight. May I please have a motion to adjourn the regular board meeting and recess into executive session to continue discussion on current litigation and employment matters related to particular persons. Thank you, Mrs. Beeger, and Mr. LeMay is a second. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. All right, so the return to public session and adjournment will not take place on video. The minutes will reflect this information in accordance with our state laws and executive ordinances. All right, thank you and good night. And to the board, take 5, and then we'll meet in our original